Okay. We are recording.
Okay, all right, I'll call to order the January 14th, 2021 Public Works meeting. Can I get the roll call, Kelly?
Sure. Chairman Waggy, you're here.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
All members present.
Okay, great. All right, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Any amendments or changes to the agenda from anybody? I'll take that as approval by acclamation. Moving on to number 3, we don't have any announcements, appointments, proclamations, or recognitions. Moving to citizen comment. Kelly, do we have anybody who would like to make?
We don't have anybody who has their hand raised.
Great, we're just trucking right through this, but that's going to change here soon. So we'll move into the report of the committee chair and alderman. For myself, I'd like to welcome everybody to our first meeting of 2021. We've got a real barn burner tonight. We're covering everything from land disputes, the playgrounds, the bathrooms, the driveways, to motorcycles for Parks and Rec to drive around. So we've got it all tonight. It's going to be exciting. The other thing I'd like to mention is we had our first sustainability committee meeting on Monday night, and actually one of their recommendations is on the agenda for tonight. So I thought it was great to get that group together. I'm excited for what that committee is going to be doing for us. So a good launch on that. With that, we'll move over to Alderman Gould.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate taking up the issue for the temporary ADA for our resident in Ward 3. Look forward to that discussion, and any back information that we need, I'm happy to provide it.
Great, thanks, Alderman Gould. Alderman Lockmiller?
No report.
Great. Alderwoman Parker Tice?
I have a question. We had a great ward meeting earlier this week, and one of the questions was about the timing of the lights in York Village. And I understand that Dan has some information, and I don't know if now is a good time to share or later during your report, but I would be interested to hear that update.
Yeah, one of the items that we'll cover tonight is the need for doing our easements. You know, we can't just put the lights in since it's not a publicly platted street. You know, those are private. So York Village streets don't belong to us. You know, Public Works doesn't own or maintain those. So what I'm trying to do now, I've got 2 out of the 5 locations, at least verbals, you know, and once I get the other 3, then I can move forward with doing the easements. I don't want to do an easement around something that somebody doesn't want. And if it fails altogether, then we'll just figure out where else to put them. So we're going with the 5 locations that were approved, and 2 out of the 5, like I said, so far seems pretty viable. And then I've got a 3rd one that's kind of on the fence, and hopefully I can convince them to do it.
Great, thank you.
Anything else, Nancy?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll move into item 6, the city administrator report. We're going to be talking about the event building and event lawn. So I don't know who we're handing this off to.
Michael Browning.
Great.
Thanks everyone. Nice to see you all again tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, if I can. Move this over to the side. All right, is that coming through on your end, everyone?
It is.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so I wanted to start here with an updated floor plan for the pavilion, and just kind of describe some of the changes since we met last time. I thought it was really helpful input and feedback in that last meeting. So we've been trying to work with that and kind of advance our concept here. In the upper right-hand corner here is our terrace space. And this is a covered terrace. We've kept with this notion of having a 2-sided fireplace. But the location here, this is kind of a driver because we really want to have a strong connection between that outdoor space and the north side of the event lawn, where we had imagined, outdoor movie could be set up, or also a temporary stage. That's kind of the ideal location for temporary stage to be. And then the other thing that's really nice about this location, and then also the kind of the whole east side here, which the terrace wraps around, is that has a good view to the east and to the north. So those are going to be kind of the best views from our site. Yeah, the last time that we talked about this, we called this the gateway concept. And the gateway is this right here. And so that is also covered space. And it's a kind of we call it the breezeway here on this drawing, but it's kind of a protected outdoor space that would have access to both the restrooms and the multi-purpose event space right here, which is labeled 1. And the thought being that creates this nice arrival and entry experience for folks that are coming to the park here. The size of our multi-purpose space is a little over 1,000 square feet. So that's a good size for a 50 to 75 person event inside. But then it's really intended to be very indoor outdoor. So you can see we've got several door locations here so that event space really can spill out and have a great connection to this outdoor terrace and then to the event lawn beyond. We've got a couple of support spaces down here at the bottom of the plan. There's some storage for park maintenance and facilities. And then we also have some furniture storage, because we imagine that the event space is going to have a few different modes. Classroom setup might be one of those, in addition to more of a kind of an event banquet type configuration here. There's a single fixture family restroom that serves that event space. And then the park restrooms up here. So this has been the subject of a lot of discussion on our part. And we've been looking at some different ideas here. I think one of the kind of real key takeaways from our last meeting was to make sure that has good visibility from the north, so that the playground, the proposed playground location and soccer field, they can have a clear line of sight for people to be able to kind of come and go from those restrooms. So we're showing on the north side here an entry, but then we also wanted to have the breezeway be able to access those as well. So for folks that are arriving to the park, that's a kind of a natural flow. You come into the park through the gateway, and then could also stop off at the restroom on your way in. So what we're showing here is a kind of a pass-through design that allows you to kind of go into the restroom on either side. The capacity of these is another issue that we've been looking at. And then providing gender equity as well in terms of the fixture counts. So what we're showing here tonight is that in the women's restroom, you'd have four fixtures. And if we look at the plumbing code, that would be a size could serve a 260 person capacity. And then on the men's side, this would also serve a 260 person capacity. And we have one water closet and 2 urinals on that side. So the total capacity for these restrooms would be around 500. And we believe that is going to be sufficient for the majority of events that are going to be happening in the event lawn, as well as the day-to-day park users as well. So there could be some instances where the event lawn is going to have a additional or one additional capacity, And in those times, we had imagined some temporary toilets could be brought in. So if we zoom out and look at that in the kind of the bigger context, you can see those restrooms with their kind of north facing orientation. So we have that good line of sight to the ball field and then also the playground space. Excuse me. The dashed line right here is some MSD piping. And so we have an easement that we need to make sure that we avoid. We think that this location accommodates that. May need to slide just a little bit to the south. But we think that generally the footprint is in a good spot and has good connection to the parking lot so that you have a good flow between the parking lot and the event lawn, and you can just have kind of a nice ability to filter between those two. And then, as I mentioned, our best views are going to be towards the stage at the north, and this is a temporary stage location, nothing that would be permanent. And then also to the east. So those are your best views. The view to the south is not as good. So we really liked that orientation with respect to locating the terrace. So we've got a number of 3D views of this as well, but I wanted to just pause and give everyone a chance to comment or ask questions before I move into those 3D views.
Let's see, I can't see the gallery while Michael's sharing. So if anybody has any questions, just go ahead and speak up.
Yeah, this is Jeff Gould. I had one question. You show the food truck thing. Are you implying there that those food trucks would be on the grass or landscaping at all, or is that another little area that you have placed there? You didn't speak to that.
Yeah. So good question. So this right here is a paved roadway that MSD will use in order to access their water diversion structure over here. And it's kind of confusing on my drawing here, but the intention would be that this is wide enough so that the food trucks could actually park on this MSD access road. So they would not be in the grass here. And that was something that we thought was important to be thinking about, just to make sure that kind of our layout is responsive to that. And then we're also thinking about the larger event lawn as well. So we may want to incorporate electricity with some hookups along that path so that you could have convenient locations and kind of planned locations for food trucks.
Thank you. One more question on the bathroom. There was some discussion among some of the board members about making sure that there's kind of parity in the facilities, and especially factoring in that generally women's bathrooms end up having a lot more lines going in. Are there more, what is your perspective on how the trends are, especially as it relates to maybe gender neutral spaces in bathrooms where it's more family facilities and less kind of by gender? So just curious on your opinion on that, and if there's a lot of people at the playground or at the soccer field. You know, of course, Alderman Wegge and I are dads who are the ones that are there with the kids too, but you know, a lot more women might be there and needing to use the restroom. So question on that.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that comes up kind of on a lot of our projects. So in terms of the parity, really where we want to start is to determine what the capacity is. And, you know, the 500 person capacity, what that would then suggest is 4 women's fixtures and 3 men's fixtures. and that's, I mean, gets to the parity point that, you know, obviously, you know, there's a, you know, a line coming out of the women's restroom a lot of times when you have an event. So, so yeah, having the 4 fixtures on the women's side and the 3 on the men does technically provide that parity. And then the gender neutral question, yeah, that's a good point too. And we're seeing that on a lot of our projects now, where we will have a family restroom that gets incorporated. And in our case, since we have the family restroom, which is serving the event space, I mean, that would be kind of the most kind of straightforward answer to that, is that would be kind of an ideal way to handle that issue. And of course, our interest is, you know, to provide function and to provide the right function, but also to not over design so that we can kind of use the resources that we have responsibly.
Very good point. Thank you. That's all I have.
Hey, Michael, could you go back to the building footprint?
Yeah, certainly.
Just had a
Oops.
question.
Wrong way. Yeah.
Okay, so the bathroom you're talking about is just above 7.
Yeah. This,
Okay,
and this would be an accessible, ADA accessible restroom, and it would be unisex. So depending on how security is handled with the actual multi-purpose space right here, that I think would be the logical way to handle the unisex issue. Now, we could also provide a door here if we wanted to be able to access that vestibule from the exterior and not have to go through the multi-purpose space. And those are the kinds of things that we can get into once we have a comfort factor that the cost is in order. So.
and then the room beneath 7, I think that says mechanical.
Yes.
I think Craig had mentioned at the last meeting that this building is going to be kind of the hub for the utilities for the entire complex, the whole park. So that's large enough to accommodate that, and then what you need for that facility itself, as far as space.
Yeah, we have this is really sized more to provide for the needs of the building here. We have we're going to have a little electrical panel. We'll have, there'll be some HVAC equipment. As far as the, you know, as far as providing space for the larger park, actually, I don't know, Craig, if you want to be able to speak to that.
Yeah, we haven't sized the electrical needs yet. We actually have our first meeting with Ameren on Tuesday to discuss that further. But there will be a need for some electrical panels in here, to Alderman Lockmiller's point. I don't see that as a major issue to this because electrical panels typically don't take up that much room. So if we can't fit them in one of these spaces, we could ultimately just pull that box down south a little bit to accommodate just a few electrical panels for lighting, for the potential stage needs, for potential lighting for the soccer park, stuff like that.
Okay. All right. And Brandon, this might be a good thing for the Sustainability Commission, but I'm just wondering, before we get into costs, I mean, do we need to have a discussion on maybe this building being a net zero type structure with, you know, accommodating solar, accommodating maybe geothermal for its heating and cooling, or maybe even that for the entire park complex? You know, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but, you know, if we're going to have this being a park that, you know, you got the GRG running through, it's going to be a showcase, I think. I'm wondering if we need to be, you know, environmentally appropriate for this whole complex down there.
Yeah, great point, Steve. Michael, any comments on that, or is that in the later design aspects of this?
Just in terms of sustainable design strategies that we're thinking about in general, or?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we were discussing this today, in fact, and there's a number of things that we'd be looking at with the building. It's, and I don't know if we want to kind of tick through them all here, but just a few of the ones that kind of immediately come to mind. The materials that we're working with, using renewable materials and regional materials. The mechanical system and energy use is of course an important one. And a geothermal field is a kind of an interesting option that we could get pricing on. PV on the roof is certainly something that we could consider, and actually do some power generation. Things like low energy use fixtures, light fixtures, things like how the drainage is handled. So we'd be thinking about stormwater quality and, one idea that would work very nicely with this concept would be to not have gutters and downspouts, but to have a kind of a French drain. And I can explain that better, but that could be used in conjunction with the rain garden, and that would be a visible and kind of nice stormwater solution. There's probably a dozen different strategies that that would work well with the concept that we're kind of laying out here. And I don't know if kind of the best way to kind of do this, but we could certainly kind of prepare a report of kind of what those strategies are as we see that would be useful to move into pricing with. And like operable windows for natural ventilation. I mean, there's a lot of different things we can do, and they have a cost associated with them too. So I guess that's the other piece of this.
right.
And there are things that, like a PV array is a perfect example. We can set it up so that we can have the array. So you might have a little extra room in the mechanical room for a converter. And then, we've been showing a standing seam metal roof. That's a perfect system to then actually clamp PV panels to. So you can kind of set it up for those things to be added into the future. Just kind of depending on where the costing comes in at. And I think that could work with a lot of different strategies here.
Okay. Yeah, I just kind of spitballing it. I think, this is probably getting too much into the weeds with it right now, but, if we're going to be looking at costs, I think, those alternatives ought to be looked at. I'd like to see this entire park facility, we've got the land, maybe a solar field to run, lighting for the parking lot, for the stage, and, show the community that, we're running this all on free power and off the grid completely. But maybe that's a bigger discussion for some other committee.
Yeah, Michael, if I can interject one thing.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, and what Alderman Lockmuller just kind of mentioned as well, is that if we want to go full net zero, if we want to go LEED certification or those type of things, to know it as early as possible, if that's the true direction that the board or the Sustainability Commission wants to take, because that does come with a lot of additional paperwork and more importantly, cost. And so we need to kind of know that kind of upfront so we can move forward in that direction. I will say that as any hopefully good Parks and Recreation professional, we always look for sustainable features and economic ways to move forward with those type of things, especially in MEP, because we do want to create as low as a energy cost as we can. So we know that that's something that we've been talking to Kristen already about. But if we want to go full net zero or full LED or full LEED, we'll need to know that pretty soon.
Okay.
And the other thing to consider is the the payback time on some of these items. Typically people or organizations will look for a 7 to 8 year payback. And I know some of these items might be more than that. So the city would have to, see what their stomach is for the amount of time it would take to pay back some of these items. So that needs to be considered as well.
Good. I have no knowledge and I have no background in this, so that's good to know. Thank you.
And we do really love that challenge. What we just run into, of course, is the costs associated with that. So I think kind of knowing that there's an aspiration there and trying to identify the reasonable strategies and get costing with that, that would be my recommendation here. And,
Okay.
just to kind of continue on that point, natural ventilation is one way that you can reduce your energy consumption on the mechanical system. And our concept with the breezeway, and then also the fact that we have glass that comes around on 3 sides of the multi-purpose space, it kind of lends itself well to that. And I can try to point out some of these features as we look at the renderings here. So let me kind of get into that. So this is looking at now the, oh yeah.
Hey, Michael, before you get into 3D renderings, Nancy, do you have any questions or anything you wanted to ask before we get into this?
No, I actually would rather see the 3D renderings and then ask some questions after. So thank you.
Okay, great. And I'm going to follow Nancy with that too. I have some questions too. So proceed, Michael. Sorry for interrupting.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. I should have let you guys finish. So yeah, this is standing on the event lawn, kind of in that stage location area, looking back to the building. And the terrace here is kind of prominent in the corner. You can see the fireplace there with the 2-sided design, and then the main event space right here in the middle. Since the last time that we met, we have done a couple of things here. We're no longer showing those steps along the edge of the terrace, and I thought that was a good point. We really don't need those for drainage, and to really be conscious of not having any trip hazards, and thinking about the accessibility for the building is something that we've been considering here. So we've taken those steps around. We've taken those steps out that were around the edge of the terrace. We're also showing a few additional door locations into the multi-purpose room. Again, really wanting to have this great indoor-outdoor character. And then here is that new entry location into the restroom block at the north side of the building. And I got a better view of that in a minute. But here, so in the terrace, looking back towards the multi-purpose space, and our intent here was to create a really strong connection to the event lawn, kind of prioritizing those good views to the east and to the north as well. And then the 2-sided fireplace, we thought was kind of interesting as a way to provide a couple of different areas on the terrace where you could have kind of natural kind of groupings of people and kind of conversational groupings, and kind of use that as an element to help to subdivide that space a little bit. This is looking at the north side of the building and the terrace here on the left-hand side. And then this is that new entry into the restrooms with, providing some good line of sight back to the ball field. And then also imagined having a drinking fountain and a bottle filling station at that location, given its kind of prominence with the trail that loops around. Just a little bit on the materials. I mentioned, the use of regional materials and renewable materials is something that we look at when it comes towards sustainable design thinking. The use of natural stone is something that we were kind of excited about. And that is something that we could find a regional stone for the building. Also, the use of glue laminated timber for the structure. So we have a kind of a wood post and beam sort of architecture that we're working with here. And of course, that would be a renewable material. And then depending on where we source that, it could be regional as well. But that would depend on the species that we ultimately would specify. We're also looking at, for the patio and the terrace surfaces, having a kind of a nice decorative concrete. That would be a cost control idea. Just to, pavers would be wonderful, but using a nice concrete we thought was an appropriate and responsible kind of choice there. And then for the roof, it's kind of hard to see here, but we've been showing a standing seam metal as our kind of roof concept. And that would be likely aluminum that would be painted, so we can kind of pick the color that we want. And as I mentioned, the ribs are kind of handy because you've got clamp systems that you can actually clamp PV panels to. So that would be something that you could choose to install in the future pretty easily. So here we are looking at the north face, and again, that's that entry into the restroom. The gateway portal is right here, kind of in the background, and the connection over to the parking lot. This side of the building is a little bit more opaque, because we're facing the parking lot, and then it really opens up as you move through the gateway, and you have a lot more glass, which is facing the park, and the event lawn. Here's a view from the parking lot and showing that kind of gateway idea. The doors into the restrooms are right there. As you come to that opening, our thought here was that, this could be just kind of a great arrival sequence into the park. So you kind of pass through this portal and kind of have a nice experience as you're coming into the park. And then it's also protected transitional space, so that's good for kind of coming and going out of the restrooms here for the park users. And then that gives you a protected entry space into the multi-purpose room. So these double doors are leading you into that multi-purpose room, which we're so here, kind of in the back of that room, looking out, there's kind of a glass wall that faces to the northeast. So that stage that I mentioned would be kind of right here in the kind of the background of your view. And, just a simple rectangular space. It's about 1,000 square feet. And we had imagined, it'd be a great place for a birthday party, or even corporate events could potentially rent out this space. And then with that indoor-outdoor kind of character with the additional doors, to be able to flow out onto the terrace and hang out at the fireplace or on a table that's kind of looking out onto the event lawn could be a really great place to hang out. Another view here, we've got a little serving area that we had imagined that's kind of part of that space, kind of in the foreground of this image. You're looking at out to the event lawn in the background here. And then now this is looking back towards that serving space that we were just looking at. And then on the parking lot side, it works out, we thought, pretty well that we have some opacity on the walls here, because this then becomes a natural location for projection to happen. So in an event, you could use that as a projection wall. And you could also use this as a teaching wall in a classroom configuration as well. So here, of course, it's set up in more of a kind of banquet style, but we also imagine that this would be a good space for classes that are coming to the park as well. And then I think my last shot here is now looking back towards the terrace, and with these doors in the foreground here, really just trying to emphasize that indoor outdoor character that we thought could be really great here. All right, so so those are the images, and we'd love to hear any comments and questions. And
Nancy, you want to go ahead?
Sure. It's really beautiful. I really love the stone in particular, like the view looking back from the soccer field toward the wall to the right of the restroom, and then the fireplace going up. That just struck me as being really pretty and set off that natural stone. I thought that was really nice. I was a little. I like the idea of the fireplace, and last time I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know how often would you use that, but I love the idea of the two different seating areas, and it's a natural break, and it's actually something really interesting to look at. So beyond just using it as a fireplace, I think it adds a nice aesthetic. So there's that. I like that you took the step out, and what else do I have to say? So inside the serving space, is the idea that there would be any water there? I know we probably don't need a whole kitchen, but is there an idea that there would be a sink or water at that inside sink?
yeah, that's how I understood it. It would have a sink. There's a question in my mind as to if there's any appliances that are there. You definitely would have outlets. So it could be used for caterers, with their kind of warming plates. And there would be a sink, it sort of as I've been picturing it. But then other items that may want to be incorporated are kind of to be determined. So things like, do you want to have any like refrigerated drawers, so you could have a little bit of cold storage? Or do you want to have ice maker, any kind of appliances like that? We have not yet determined.
Well, that's great. I would certainly look to Eric for some suggestions on how he thinks the building would be used. But yeah, and then my other question is about I'll call it the food truck loop that you described. Where do you have something with the topography of the park? And is that loop raised some up above, or would that be flooded when if you put electric in? Is that high enough that it wouldn't get flooded?
So the contours are on, well, it's kind of hard to see here, but so Deer Creek is off to the right-hand side of this image. And of course, that's the lower ground. There's quite a bit of fill which will be added here to level off the event lawn and then the footprint. So where the food trucks are going is fairly level. You can see a couple of contour lines right here. So it starts and that's fairly gentle. It starts to slope down here as you move to the east. And then it's a little bit higher ground over here on the left-hand side. Now this is still being worked out, but my understanding is that there has been some discussion that the MSD access road would actually have a little connection right over here, so that food trucks would be able to come in off, not actually have to go through the parking lot, but they could come through here. They'd be, and this is all paved and concrete, in fact, and then be able to park along here. And this is, I'm not sure what the floodplain level is here. If we're outside, I mean, to your question, is this the 100-year or the 500-year floodplain? What height that is actually at? But we're a lot higher than Deer Creek, I guess. So
to jump in, I know that everything around the pavilion is out of the 100-year floodplain. And I know that we are working with Jacobs to get the exact contour lines of the Lomar once it's done. But I'm confident that all that area that you're talking about will be out of the 100-year floodplain. And specifically, we wanted to make sure that was out of that 100-year floodplain.
Right.
I was assuming the building would be, but I was sort of just, the idea, I just sort of took that it was going to be, but I was just curious about I'll call it the food truck loop, for lack of a better word, just if there is electric run through there, how that works and all that.
And again, we'll confirm that with Jacobs.
I don't need to know how it works, just to raise it. Thank
Well,
you.
and I guess it is kind of a question for this group too. You know, I mean, we thought it was pretty interesting to be able to park food trucks here and have that proximity to the event lawn. You know, there will be some cost in order to run the electrical and then to be able to provide those connections. I mean, I don't think it's a huge cost, but it seemed like something that would be worth looking at. So I guess that's just kind of a question to the group if they're in agreement that that there's value in trying to accommodate these food trucks.
And again, to interject, the conversation has always been to kind of put food trucks there. So I know that the Jacobs had been looking at the possibility of putting some sort of electrical junctions along those sides, not only for food trucks, but if we do like a tent setup for, you know, like a farmer's market or something like that. So I think the idea of that roadway in particular to be multi-use for a lot of different things, not only for food trucks, for events, for just multiple reasons. So I know that Jake's already been looking into that as well.
Hey, Michael, I have some questions if everybody else is done, or Nancy, you're done.
Yeah, I'm finished. Good, thanks.
Hey, Michael, can you go back to the floor plan of the building again? What is the so below the two urinals in the men's restroom? What is below them? What is that thing?
That's a little janitor's closet. So that'd be a locked closet that the park facilities would be able to access, and toilet paper and things like that.
Okay. And then down by the family restroom down in the event space, what can you kind of explain what the thinking of that little anteroom outside of it is, or?
Yeah, that's like a vestibule space, and that's really just so that you don't have any visibility from the event space into the restroom. So
Okay.
just kind of for privacy. This door might be optional, like if we didn't want to have the door, but we typically want to turn people just so that you don't have any sight lines in the event space into that toilet room.
That makes sense. And kind of your thought about maybe having an external door to that. I know this is a minor detail, but that seems like a really good idea, so that you don't have to open this room to have a much more ADA compliant bathroom available when we're having something on the event lawn. This may or may not be open. And I like how you have the line of sight. I guess as a parent, I'm a little concerned that there might be an entrance and an exit to the bathroom, because that you don't know if your kid's still in there. They might have run out the wrong door. And it almost, honestly, it seems like the doors on the south side almost aren't needed. You have that line of sight issue. If you're in the event space, you're going to be looking kind of right into the men's room there, possibly able to see. And I don't know. It seems like the usage of this from the playground and the soccer fields is going to be pretty much nonstop, and the events that we have are going to be infrequent. And you have pretty good visibility to the north side from the stage as well, or from the event lawn. It almost seems like that lower door is not necessary, and then that gets rid of you're walking through this great gateway into the new area right by the bathrooms. Just my thoughts.
Well, and it's an option, honestly. I think that's really a choice, and I think I could see it either way, to be honest. And it's really just a question of convenience. If you're okay with walking around to the north to enter, as far as the code is concerned, there's no need for those rooms to have the second exit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it seems like you were doing that because we were trying to meet a lot of different needs here, right? I know we piled a bunch of stuff on you last time. And then just one minor thing. I mean, I love bike repair tool stations. I hope we have like 20 of them in Brentwood someday. It just seems like a weird place to put it on the patio, right? We'd want that near the pathway as people are riding their bikes. People might not even realize it's there if they have a flat tire at some point.
Yeah, and that's a fairly small thing. And we didn't show it in the renderings. That might be kind of the next level of detail. One possible location for that would be here. Another place I had thought of was here. But yeah, I don't think we want that to be on the terrace, to your point. So, you know, whether it's kind of off to the side somehow, or I mean, it wants to have visibility to the trail, which is why we kind of weren't thinking of putting it down here. But I will say this, you know, that hasn't really yet been kind of fully thought through. So I think that might be kind of one of our next kind of levels of detail.
Okay, and then, you know, I really appreciate Steve. He's singing my song about sustainability. I would be very much in favor of understanding how much does it cost to get this as a LEED certified building, and, you know, really what our options are. And again, that's probably more in the details phase, but to Eric's point, we need to know that up front, what we really want to do. And I know we're considering at least, you know, maybe an ordinance to make all new buildings, solar capable, at least, you know, that to have that capacity to go in the future. So, and again, that's still preliminary discussion, but I would be very much in favor of making this kind of something we can really hold up of the sustainability of Brentwood. But other than that, I think it looks great. I mean, the more I think about this, I am excited about, you know, an event that kind of spills out on that patio. You know, I keep visualizing like a wine tasting or something, but, you know, I just think this is going to be an awesome ad.
Yeah, great.
I'll echo.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll echo that I agree with getting the cost of the sustainability, and really, if it's reasonable to make this a LEED certified building, I think that would be great. I didn't mention that in my comments.
If I can go back briefly about the restrooms, I don't know if somebody mentioned this, and if they did, I apologize. But what if we had an option where those southern doors are locked and then unlocked for event lawn, things that take place in the event lawn, or when that multi-purpose room is in use, but then otherwise they could be locked when it's just a Saturday morning soccer game or something like that, and then everybody has to go in and out of the north doors.
Yeah, David, that was my first thought too. You could just keep one locked, but then it's like, how do you know that it's actually locked? You know, I mean, maybe somebody forgets to lock it and your kid runs out the wrong side and you're waiting for him I don't know.
Right.
It just seems like those southern doors aren't really adding a lot of value, because if you're in the event space, you're going to use the nicer bathroom, right? You're not going to go outside and walk across there to the other ones. And that single bathroom should support 70 people in the event room.
The other thought that just keeps coming into my brain is that what if we took that space and added I know you lose some space, but by subdividing a section, but if from the south, that's the south, it's actually a family bathroom there. So that, you know, so you take the whole space of the width there and you just make it one family bathroom, and then make the other bathrooms separated. Then if you're having an event, then I think I would prefer, if I was there with my daughter, you know, to be able to take her into the bathroom, you know, into a family bathroom, rather than, to Brandon's point, you know, go in and then hope she comes out the right door. So that, I don't know, might be something to consider, and it may impact, I know, the structure and the parity of toilets and all that. But I have a couple other questions, but if
Yeah, go ahead.
So the fireplace, one thing that I've been thinking of, I like the idea of it. I love the visual of it. It's beautiful. Are you envisioning that as a wood burning fireplace, or a gas kind of something that's low maintenance, kind of a gas fireplace that can be then turned on and turned off and really doesn't require a whole lot of cleanup. And then what are the safety measures that are in place? I love the look of it, the way you have it rendered, but obviously protecting little tiny hands from, getting in there and burning themselves would be something that I would be concerned about. So, making sure that there's some safety protocols there, or at least built into it. So I don't know if you want to answer that before I ask another question.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really gotten into that detail yet. I would love it, and I'll just, my kind of opinion, I would love for that to be wood burning. And, there just is a certain kind of charm to the, the smell and just the sound, and just the character of that is not like fully replicated with a gas fireplace. There, in terms of keeping people away from it, you could imagine a detail, or just like kind of safety measure, you could imagine a detail like a little railing that would, for younger children, be able to discourage them from getting too close to any kind of open flame that might be there. And then you could enclose it as well, right? That would be an additional level of, I guess, kind of safety precaution. But yeah, those are just kind of off the cuff, but those are my first thoughts there.
That's great. I realize that we're getting into some weeds, and those are the detail levels. I think you can probably take from the fact that we are discussing the details that we're all feeling pretty positive about the general concept and structure that you have here. So I appreciate that. Which, my next questions are into the details, so just more for consideration. I'd love to think more, or I love the idea of a projection wall or an interactive wall. So I'm very interested in our next round of what are the materials that are going to be used for that. Are there magnetic, some opportunity for some magnetic ability for there? So in case you wanted to just put things up simply with magnets so that we don't have people taping things, et cetera. So I love that thought. But as you get into the details, it'd be good to think through those. And then the only other thought that I had was, and it probably doesn't work because you can't do them everywhere, but in the one render that you showed where it was the inside of the event space looking out onto the event lawn, it struck me that, man, it would be nice if those doors were sliding doors and they just sort of opened up and didn't need to just be propped open. And if you wanted to allow for a free flowing kind of event. So I don't know, just your thoughts on the architectural implications of that. If they kind of opened up and slid to the side instead of.
Yeah, there's different ways we can do that. We showed the swinging doors because those are going to be kind of the most cost-effective way to do it. We'd love to do, I mean, there's like opening wall systems where like the whole wall could just go away, and we would love that. And I think, and we can also, we've talked with Craig about pricing some alternates too. So the next thing that we need to do, before we really get into like working out all the details, which of course will come, but we need to make sure that we're kind of in the ballpark from a cost standpoint. So we'll do that kind of conceptual cost estimate. And as part of that, we had imagined having some alternate, so upgraded doors, to your point, would be one of those that I would love to include in that. And so the thing in my mind is an opening wall system. So it would be, a good portion of this wall. I mean, maybe from here all the way to here could just go away, and then you'd have just this great flow between the terrace and the event space.
That's all I had.
Hey, Brandon, I just have one more question.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Michael, in that event area, if we've got 75 people in there with glass windows, and I would not give up the glass for this, but I'm just wondering, about the acoustics in there. Is there possibly with the ceiling material being able to absorb some of that, or is that just kind of a give and take if you're going to have glass walls?
And that's a great point. So there are a lot of hard surfaces in the renderings. You know, I think we could look at, so there's a ceiling in that space, and we could look at having acoustical material in the ceiling. And then there's also these opaque walls might be a place that we could think about introducing some acoustical. There's felt wall coverings is one kind of attractive way that, you know, just has kind of a nice look and feel, but also provides some sound absorption. I don't think we want to do carpet. I mean, that's a way that you kind of often get acoustical absorption. Probably the floor would be acoustically reflective, and we would be looking at the wall, you know, these two walls and the ceiling to provide that absorption.
Okay.
But it's a good point. I think we're going to want to find some acoustical absorption in there.
It's amazing. It's amazing what we can do with the ceiling acoustics, because we've had spaces that were glass on 4 sides and a concrete floor and had an echo. And by installing clouds in the ceiling that weren't even that large, it removed the reverberation completely. So I think Michael's right, between either the ceilings and or some wall treatments that should take care of things. With the glass walls on 2 sides and a hard surface floor.
Okay. Thanks, David. That's all.
So I guess I guess there's no motion or anything necessary here, right? This was just to gather feedback.
Well, I think I'll let Craig defer on this, but I do know, I think if everybody's relatively comfortable with where things are, let's say relatively comfortable being 95%, let's say, the next thing I think is for Craig to start putting together a construction cost estimate. So I think we're looking for some sort of sign off or approval so that we can move on with the cost estimate and then all get back together and say, here's where the numbers are compared to the design, and here's some alternates, and here's some other methods we have, like, you know, Bola's going to reach out to Post Holdings and get them to sponsor the building, right, Bola?
Exactly. Thank you for that.
Hey, anytime. So whether that's an official motion or not, I just know that's where we want to try to move on to after tonight. So.
Okay, well, if somebody wants to make that motion and maybe include the pricing for the different sustainability options, we'll formalize it.
So moved.
Wonderful motion. I will make that.
I got a motion from Steve and a second from Nancy. I heard.
Sounds good.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I think you guys it looks great. You know, I'm excited about this. The more I think about it, so fantastic.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Michael's done a great job. He's a one-man machine on this, so I'm always excited to see what he comes up with. So
we call that a robot.
Yeah, I can't take all the credit, just 95% of it.
there you go.
All right. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the time.
Okay, let's move back into the agenda. Move on to item 7, the department reports. So we got Public Works up first.
No report. Lots of things later.
Okay, Parks and Rec, Eric.
Yeah, I have 2 quick things. Well, one quick thing and then one longer thing. The quick thing is just and this wasn't in there until I think yesterday, but we just were contacted by a volunteer from Forest Relief, and they are requesting that the city allow this volunteer to fill up his water tank to water the 100 new planted trees in York Village over the next 2 years. He's estimating somewhere between 0 and 6 times of needing to fill it up, depending on precipitation throughout the year. And we, you know, working with Dan and Nancy in our finance department, we pay a little under a cent a gallon for water. And so if we did it, I put in the prices. It'd either be $10.50 for 2 times, up to $31.50. So be anywhere from $0 to $63 for the 2 years. again, it is in York Village and private property, so we obviously want to bring that forward to you guys to make sure that you approve this before we agree to it.
Where would he be filling this tank?
Probably either Memorial Park or Brentwood Park. I think we have a quick coupler at Brentwood Park, which would probably be quicker. And so that's where we would recommend him, working with him to do this at.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion to allow, maybe we make him do 100 extra trees on city property?
So moved.
Anybody want to second that?
Oh, I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion from Nancy and second from Steve. All those in favor of allowing them to do this, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to the playground design discussion. And so I will share my screen here, and I'll try to do this fairly quickly. As always, stop me if you have questions. There we go. I believe everyone can see this at this point. Good. All right, so I know we talked about kind of getting into the playground discussion, and so what we're trying to do tonight is basically talk to and engage the Public Works Committee about different playground designs and to talk about which one that the committee would prefer, so that when we move forward with the playground proposal, we're all on the same page. And then we're also hoping to get approval to move forward with the playground design for two main reasons: to ensure the city is ready to have the playground be installed during the GRG connector phase of the construction. And also we can start fundraising for this playground to supplement the cost of it. A lot of the grants, especially playground grants, they want to see design and a cost estimate. And so we can't really submit any grants at this time until we have the design in decent shape. So to kind of talk about the different types of playgrounds, I'll just be going through four typical types: the traditional playground, inclusion, naturescape, which is a very new trend, and then what I like to call hybrid. So we'll be talking about all of those. The traditional is kind of the tried and true playgrounds you've seen most of your life. But there have been a lot of newer trends that if we move forward with the traditional playground, I would recommend. And one is climbing structures, unique freestanding climbing structures. That's almost what was shown in the conceptual drawings earlier for the playground. And there's also something I'd like to call climbing cages, and I'll talk about that as well. Longer slides, more open play, space for creative play. So it's not just you can't use anything. One I really like is utilizing the topography instead of just a flat surface. And you can get a lot of play out of that. And again, I'll have some examples about that. And then including a splash pad or water feature. And so what I like to do is kind of talk about different parks that are out there. This is Riverview Park in Mesa, Arizona. And so again, this is probably a little extreme, but I'm just kind of showing, and this climbing structure is a 50-foot tall Genesis climbing tower. And this one right here is a 60-foot long Caterpillar mesh rope climbing structure. And I have pictures again more. And the idea is to get kids moving around and climbing, and it's part of that climbing trend. While you think of a 50-foot tower as being unsafe, the idea of all these structures is that they put in different little landing platforms, or you see them overlapping the rope. So if someone were to slip, they don't slip very far. Now, again, there's always how kids will do it, utilize it that you never thought of. And would someone try to Spider-Man up that side? I would hope not. But, I'm just, as you say, once you put it in a playground, then you understand how people will play with it. So you can kind of see there's the Genesis tower again, and this is kind of another view of that 60-foot long Caterpillar kind of climbing mesh thing. So again, it's just a quick little overview. And then lastly, I've had a couple conversations with parents and their kids about things they'd like to see in playgrounds or in our parks. And one of the things that keeps coming up is a zip line. And so I kind of showed that they have a zip line there. So I just want to kind of show it and show you guys what it looks like. So that's Riverview Park. The next one is Treeline Adventure Playground, and this is in Johnson County. And you'll see a lot of Kansas playgrounds because my parents live in Kansas. So to get out of the house, so I take my kids to playgrounds. And this is kind of the view of that climbing cage. So you still get a lot of climbing aspect out of it, but it's fully encompassed in somewhat of whether it's rope, whether it's fence, something. So it's a little bit safer. And again, you kind of see there it is going up to a really long winding slide, as we talked about being a longer slide. You even see kind of the circular tunnel up. So again, that's just a quick view. And again, even offside of the main structure, all this is just all climbing pieces. Again, following kind of the current trend of getting kids moving more than just walking up and down ramps. So this is Stillwell Community Park in beautiful Stillwell, Kansas. That's where my parents live, small town in the middle of nowhere. And this one, while it is fully inclusive, again, what I'm going to talk about is the use of topography, and you kind of see it here, better views here. So again, they utilize topography. They have climbing, they have play features that kind of go up and down. It's a great place for slides. And again, it is kind of a newer trend that I love to see. And they're cropping up more and more. This is just the easiest one I know of and where that is. And so again, this kind of, if you're looking on top of that, held down. And again, even with topography, you can make it a fully inclusive playground, which is what they did. So moving on to inclusive playgrounds, inclusion playgrounds. Again, the basic of inclusion playgrounds, and I'm sure we all know, is to design basically a sensory-rich environment that enables children of all develop physically, social, mentally, emotionally. So again, it basically allows kids to play together no matter where you're at on the playground. And so whether it's a 4-story playground, there'll be a ramp to get up there or something else. And there's 2 examples I kind of threw in there. And one is Tillis Park right across the street. And again, if you see, you know, you have all the ramping to get up to it. And this is more of your traditional within inclusion, because again, you see a lot of ramping. You see a lot of these hub areas where there's little activities, slides, swings, those type of things. But again, the nice part is that it is inclusive. Now, with inclusive, either you have to be creative or you get a lot of these ramping. So that starts the ramp, come up to the first platform, up to the next platform where they have more activity and slides, and then it gets you further up. And again, you have to really use ramping to kind of get you everywhere. Swings is always important. And again, you see kind of inclusive swings. This is the new fun parent and toddler swing that is out there. So again, swings are always important in a playground. And then I kind of threw in the water feature. If you've been over there, you kind of know what the water feature is. This is a very traditional water feature with the water jets coming up on a typical concrete pad. And again, it just allows kids to run around. The jets kind of hit and miss and are timed at different times. So again, it just gives a water feature that's, you know, a little bit different, something else for the kids to do. The other one is Jake's Field of Dream in Wentzville. And if you haven't been out there, it's a beautiful playground. It just opened in late 2019. And so the idea is this, again, it's fully inclusive. Any kid with any type of disability can get to any feature. And what you get is the side or the concrete that gets you everywhere. So this gets you to the little rocking boat. This gets you to that nice play feature. And then this gets you, this is a 2-story little level, supposed to be a baseball field. So that's kind of Busch Stadium, and those are the bleachers out there in the seating area. And down on the ground is the actual field. And so again, with everything here, this shows a lot of kind of that open space for creative play as well, with a lot of different inclusive pieces. Like that is an inclusive merry-go-round. You got an inclusive slide right here. So again, it's a beautiful park. They have 2 different zip lines, one for for accessible zip line, and then a regular zip line. So again, you can do that together with your friends. Again, it's a wonderful place. So that's kind of the showing of how the second level, and again, the ramping is up there. So a lot of times either ramping or concrete to get the inclusive playgrounds to really fit, to make sure everything's there. And there's the zip line. So there's just regular, there's accessible. And again, it's a way for both people to go together and you're still playing with your family, your friends, things like that. So the Naturescape. Naturescape is really kind of the newest trend in playgrounds. And it's really an idea of allowing children to play and connect with nature. It usually involves a natural looking water feature and really has what I like to call distinct areas or really nodes of play. The easiest one to kind of talk about is what they're doing in Forest Park, the 16-acre, $4 million nature play. So if we want 16 acres and $4 million, I can make this happen for us too. The idea is you kind of see the different areas, the Century Garden, the mounds, meadow, and each one of these is a different node of different natural play. Again, it's not ready yet. It's going to open this year, so you're still looking at a lot of the conceptual designs. you kind of see kind of the natural sort of even pathway that gets you to everything. This is their water feature, so you have something coming up through the rocks, but then it filters into that natural creek, so you get to play in that as well. They probably will have a couple smaller jets around here, so you can play on top of that. The very natural pieces, those are the mounds with climbing pieces on top of it, sand, dirt, just again, very naturalistic. The next one is Senate Park in Blue Ash, Ohio. And again, my kids hate me because whenever we go on someplace on vacation, I drag them to playgrounds. And so we kind of happened by this. This is an old airfield in Blue Ash, Ohio, that the city didn't need anymore. So they're turning it into a park with all this is going to be new development beside it. And what they kept was the air traffic controller tower. And so I'm up in the air traffic controller tower looking down onto the natural area here. It was lit up at night. We saw the tower lit up at night. We're like, what the heck is this? So I was next to a park. We went back in the day and we found this. So again, you see a lot of very natural looking areas. This is a natural climbing piece again. They actually have 2 zip lines right back here. Again, swings in natural area. And then this is their water features. You can kind of come down here, you play in the creek, even have a bigger open pool if you want something like that. So again, there's kind of like the wood logs, very natural. There's the zip lines, even that's on a natural looking encasement. There's kind of the rope and even more climbing features over there. There's what's called an elephant swing, where you put 3 or 4 people and spin them around. So, and again, still natural materials. These are all just planks of wood that you can actually move and create kind of like these lean-to type of structures. See, some have gotten into the grass, or not the grass, the sand. But again, it's just a very beautiful sort of way to kind of go with playgrounds. Bull Creek, again, is in Johnson County, Kansas. This is one on a smaller scale, so not as big as the 2 we just saw. But again, it's hard to see, but down here is actually a natural creek, and they cordon off part of the creek for play. And then they have these little pocket nodes. This one's even covered with a shade, so you get the shade during the day. But again, the slide on top of the hill that you go down, again, just these little different areas of pockets. And then, just another sort of little area, Native American area that was developed. So they wanted to kind of key to that sort of history of the Native Americans living around this big bull area. So that's kind of the nature playscapes. And then finally, we have the hybrids. And so what I like to call a hybrid is really a combination of a nature playscape and the newer trends in traditional playgrounds. You have a lot of natural play, and then you have a lot of climbing structures, slides, and again, that opens space for creative play. These are still kind of fairly new, and the best example is O'Day Park in O'Fallon. So again, this is a very typical slide. They have a very typical piece over here, but then you see sort of the topography. You see the natural sort of play area on the topography. That's all wood climbing features. This is a wood swing set. So again, you get kind of that natural area for the swinging. But again, there's still very traditional, newer traditional place. This is the new take on teeter-totters, which is a heck of a lot of fun. If you've never been out there, get out there with your kids, and you'll have about 2 or 3 minutes as there'll be a line waiting for you. But again, it's kind of that mix of natural with kind of the newer trends in playgrounds. And so that kind of shows you how the hill comes in place. Even this is kind of a rope feature that gets you can climb this into an opening in up top that leads to that orange slide that you saw in a couple pictures ago. So again, it's just a lot of that change. And even this is their 2 to 5 year old playground. Even that is primarily climbing features, swings, climbing features, and slides. So that's right off that 2 to 5 year old playground is this slide that goes up top of the hill, slide down the bottom using the topography again. Finally, their water feature, again, is a mix. They have this more of a jet area up here. So they have the 3 coming up here and then smaller jets popping up. The water flows down this sort of very architectural stone into this into this stone creek. So you get play up here and get play down here. This is supposed to be architectural. Everyone wants to play on that. Gets very slippery. I wouldn't suggest that at all. They've had a couple accidents already with this area here. Again, it looks beautiful. And so that's kind of the quick thing on the hybrid. So I know I went through this very quickly, but I know we have a long agenda. But our recommendation for staff is to install a hybrid, and for a number of reasons. It would be the only hybrid in St. Louis County at this current time. We have we have inclusion playgrounds in Tillis, Shaw Park, and a lot of other places. And I think it'd be a great feature somewhere else, maybe in the park system later on. Naturescape, it's going to be almost impossible to compete with Forest Park with what they're going to do there. And then, you know, some of the topography already kind of lends itself to the hybrid. And if we need more, if we need more dirt, we might be able to utilize it from the project if we need it, leading to potential cost savings. So that is staff's recommendation. Talk about anything you want, but what we're looking for next steps is kind of see if the Public Works Committee has a decision on what type of playground you'd like to see in the park. That way we can work with the staff and consultants with Craig, and either work with our, move forward with design. And once we get design done, we can begin working on grants and other fundraising initiatives to supplement the cost of the playground. So that's kind of the next steps. And I will leave it open for questions or comments.
Okay, I'm gonna go first this time. So Eric, I've been doing the same thing with my kids, dragging them around the playgrounds in the area. We went to O'Day. It is impressive. They really liked it. And the other great one out there is Veterans Memorial. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that one. That was just unbelievable. So I think, you know, this hybrid approach is the right way. I think an awesome water feature, you know, a big one. I think that respects kind of what we're trying to do here of flood mitigation in some respects, right? I mean, it's water is a thing here. So I am supportive of that. The thing in terms of next steps, the thing I see missing here is when do we establish what the budget is for this? And it almost seems like we should be doing that up front. And I am a proponent of making that number of the budget as big as we can within the project here. But it seems like that is a step that's missing to me, so that you know, and as you're going out and designing this, you know, what is the scope of the magnitude that we're going to be dealing with here. And I want it to be big, and I want a zip line too, and I want it to be like a destination, you know, playground in St. Louis County, no question about it.
To answer that is what we've been showing in all the previous sort of presentations where we've talked about additional park features. What we had shown was a budget around 2.25 million. And again, that was based on the original cost estimate. I didn't really want to talk about, you know, I wanted to kind of get the thoughts of the committee about where a budget could be fit in. You know, we can work with any of those, you know, budget numbers. Now to kind of give you a little of a basis, the Tree Line Adventure Playground in Johnson County, that would open up about 3 years ago, and that was $1 million playground. Jake's Field of Dreams, which opened last year, was 1.3 around there. And then we already talked about the Forest Park Nature Playscape. And Craig can correct me if I'm wrong, but O'Day was over $1 million as well. So I think, you know, what we showed early on was based on that conceptual design from Jacobs. And obviously we can tinker with that depending on what the committee feels.
Well, don't you need a number when you go request design proposals?
Yeah, we do. And again, like I said, we've been carrying about the $2 million budget for now, knowing that we'd have that discussion moving forward.
Yeah, I can add to that, Eric. So Navigate was the construction manager on O'Day Park. So you're right, the playground equipment was around $1 million. Some of you have visited that playground, that park. There's a lot of components to the budget on that. So there's that land bridge, you know, that has that big climbing structure beneath that. That's in addition to playground equipment. There's a lot of grading to make those hillsides and landscaping. And then there's the water feature. So to simulate the water feature, the playground, the land bridge, and all the landscaping and topography to make all that happen, it was right around $2 million. So that's when we presented to you all that budget a couple months ago of 2.25 million. The thought was there's about $2 million in construction costs, about $250,000 in design and other soft costs. So it was a starting point. But we heard you all when we brought forward the comfort station design, where you want to be part of the evolution of it. So that's why we're starting here where we didn't want to get the cart before the horse, listening to feedback from that previous Board of Aldermen meeting in the conference station. We wanted to see what approach you guys wanted to take with the playground, because if staff recommends the hybrid approach and you all say, no, we want something different, I mean, we don't want to spend a lot of time on that. So I think if you guys all give us your feedback, if you agree with the hybrid approach, Alderman Wakey gave us great feedback just now. We can really kind of put pen to paper and really start, digging into this. But, for $2 million, you saw a day park. I don't know if there's more than you want to do beyond that playground that would give us some feedback on how much to add to it. But that's a pretty remarkable area for $2 million.
Yeah, I mean, what would be the steps if we want a $5 million playground, right? I mean, we have been attacking cost on everything here, and it's my opinion that this is why we've been doing that, right? That we can go big on this thing that is the most resident facing thing that we probably have, and it will be the heaviest used aspect of Brentwood bound. How would we do that? Do we need to go to the and I'm not saying we would, but I'm hypothetically, right? If we wanted to increase that budget number in the scope of Brentwood bound, do we need to go to the board? Do we need to have a workshop? Do we need to get concurrence that we, this is where, especially where we are in the project and the comfort level we have on some things, how would we do that?
Yeah, I would look to BOLA for a little bit, but I think where we were going as a staff is just based on the numbers that have been presented before. I would assume to go bigger. I can always go bigger. Don't get me wrong. I can always spend more money. Don't get me wrong. But I think I think that would be something that would need to be approved at the committee level and most likely at the board. And BOLA, is that?
I think it would be ideal for there to be a dedicated workshop just for this item so that the other board members can weigh in and I guess show concurrence with the playground type that might seem to be the preference of the Public Works Committee, and make sure that it's their preference as well. Then the next question would be for Craig. Do we have funds to increase it to the 5 million, or do we need to go out and get donations or grants to supplement that?
So there's no money in the currently $85.6 million budget I present to you all every, twice a month for the playground. So this has always been an additional project. If you look at the bottom of my report, you can see all the additional funds, and in the DRG funds are not part of that. So you guys do have, I'm going off memory, about 8 million in additional funds. And then the GRG agreement, Bull and I just got that last night. So we're going to review that again, but hopefully it works and it goes to you all soon. And then that's another $3 million that's not captured anywhere on those additional funding sources. So just so you guys all know, whatever you spend on the playground just has to come out of the additional funding sources. You've got additional funds there. It's ultimately up to you all on how much you want to spend, and you've got to capture from that area.
And I think, again, and Craig can correct me if I'm wrong, is while it'll probably cost a little bit more in the design feature, if we wanted to kind of work with whoever we choose to say, hey, to prepare for a workshop, we'd like to get a $2 million, if we want to do the hybrid, let's work on $1 million design and then scale it up for whatever the cost you guys want us to kind of beat at the top end. And we can kind of show the difference between the two. Now, again,
Yes.
more design work and more cost, but again, it might be better to kind of do that early on than show it 2 million and say, oh, no, we want more, and then have to go up.
Yeah.
Easier at the top and go down.
Like you've seen with Christner, there's an ability to work with the designer to kind of add scope, and we've done that. We've made the bathrooms bigger since the last meeting. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Eric. I mean, you could challenge somebody to say, show me what a $2 million playground, show me what a $3 million playground, show me what a $4 million playground is, and you guys could place priorities from there.
Okay, those are all my questions, but I am supportive of the hybrid approach and a water feature. So I'll open it up for other aldermen. And again, I can't see anybody, so speak up.
This is Steve. Can I jump in, Brandon?
Yeah, please.
Hey, Eric, all our other playgrounds, what are they, traditional, inclusive, or?
They're all traditional. While we meet ADA standards, we don't meet full inclusive yet. In the master plan, there is talk about an inclusive playground in Memorial Park. Again, that was prior to Brentwood Bound. No matter what we do, it'll be accessible. You have to have accessibility for any playground you put in. It's just, there's a difference between accessible and fully inclusive.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brandon. I'd go for the hybrid. And I'd kind of like to get away from the brightly colored equipment and all that and more natural looking setting. So that's my 2 cents, hybrid. Thanks.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I would agree. I think your instinct is dead on. I like the rationale. I do appreciate you bringing, to Craig's point that, that this is kind of what we asked for. I think it's wonderful to be able to see the process and the options that are available. It just makes our ability to kind of back your recommendation to our residents and constituents that we're heading in the right direction. So I love the hybrid, especially if I don't know, we've done a lot of clearing and excavating now. So maybe all the trees that we've taken out, we couldn't use, but it would be nice if we could had, some trunks of trees that could be salvaged and sort of used for the playground and the hybrid aspect of it. I love the topography and taking advantage of that. I think it's fantastic. And I agree that much like using some of the limestone in the building for some of the historical aspects of what the quarry that used to be in this area, I think having a water feature kind of pulling up from this connects the lake and the creek, and sort of is a little storytelling that I think will be a legacy for here on. So I think that's fantastic. I agree. I think a workshop as the next step. So if you need a motion for to move forward on the hybrid and to then bring a workshop to the other board members and potentially even residents, and then showing a tier of potential scaling up. I think that's a fantastic idea. So if you need a motion like that, I'll make that motion.
Okay, we got a motion out there.
A second.
All right, and then we'll ask Bola if that's a valid motion, because I think only the mayor has the superpower to call a workshop, but maybe we can coerce him into doing that.
No, I think 4 aldermen can call a workshop.
Yeah, 4 aldermen can, but I think he would support this, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Great, okay.
I don't have much to add, but I'll add that I like the hybrid approach. Everything, I will echo everything that's been said without repeating it. And I like seeing a tiered level of what these playgrounds could look like, because, there's also overbuilding. So if we're going to put a $5 million playground and 16 acres in Forest Park is $4 million, I don't know what we're spending money. So, I'd like to see the tiers of what that would be, because I think we can really do something interesting and phenomenal that will be a destination without throwing money away. So that's my 2 cents.
Can I get one question of clarification just to make sure for this workshop? And so I'm trying to figure out the next steps. Would we want a design team there for that workshop so they can kind of hear the discussion, kind of like what we did with Christner? So really we'd be working on getting a proposal next, approving the proposal, then doing the workshop.
Does anybody disagree with wanting to do that? That seems like the right approach to me.
I think it makes it more efficient. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel, Eric, but it feels like the process with Christner has been more efficient.
Yeah, and that's what I want to make sure is that we did that before we had the workshop, is bring back design proposals to the to the Public Works Committee for discussion.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We have a question on the floor. A motion. Any further discussion of that, or any other questions about it?
Can I add one more little caveat into this? Sorry.
Yeah.
The options of moving forward with the design is that staff could reach out to our on-call architects, our on-call landscape architects, and get proposals from them. Or because this is a bigger project, we could submit a request for qualifications and get additional proposals than just who we have on call. So I'm just wanting to throw that one out there too, to see which way the committee would rather go.
Is there a timing issue with one over the other? I mean, my instinct would be to go, this is potentially a really big contract. So I would rather go out for bid, but does that mess up the timing of when this has to be finished?
It shouldn't. I mean, I've been talking with Craig about timing, and again, that's one of the reasons we brought it now, is that we'd have enough time to go for to put out an RFQ if we needed to. Again, like you said, Alderwoman Tice, the idea of this being one of the larger projects, I would tend to agree that would lend itself to going out for an RFQ.
Yeah, I would support that too, because then you maybe get firms that are more expertise in playground design, not all landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve.
I don't know what order we're going in. As far as, I mean, I can make a motion to go out for an RFQ, but I think we got a motion.
We do.
Do we
So
have to have the RFQ before we have this workshop? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then I'll back off a second.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're converging on something here. That's good.
Yeah, the original motion I had was to move forward with the hybrid plan and to workshop and to hold a workshop.
Yeah.
You know, this can
Okay.
be one motion.
Yeah.
You know, it can be one motion. The RFQ and then the workshop. So
Mhm.
if anybody wants,
I'll amend my motion to include Steve's RFQ aspect.
Yeah. And I would
If
just
I
add to
second it, I'll-
proceed
I'll-
with the hybrid approach. Yep.
If I second it, I concur with the amendment.
Okay, I think we've reached something here. All right, Eric, Bola, Craig, everybody have what they need with this motion?
absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Let's go with any other discussion from the board. Great. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. And I assume that RFQ will have the different tiers in it, or how will that be addressed, Eric? I should ask that before we voted. I apologize.
And Craig and I will work on an RFQ. It talks about how we're looking for a hybrid type design and the ability to tier it for workshop. And we'll include workshop, you know, one, probably multiple workshops just in case. That way we have those ready to go. So Craig and I will work on that, but yeah, definitely with the tiered approach.
Okay. All right, great. This is exciting too. I mean, it's no bathrooms in the event building, but pretty cool.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Eric, in your department report? Good stuff.
No, I do have a couple things coming up like Dan, but I am done with my department report.
Okay, let's move on to planning and development. Lisa?
My items are also below, so no report.
Okay, we'll move on to item 8, the consent agenda. The only thing we have on there is the minutes from December 10th. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I think we had a motion from Nancy first and then probably a second from Jeff there. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, then we'll move it into old business, OMCI. Dan, I assume this is you?
Yep, it's me. If you guys recall, last year, MSD, their board met, and this OMCI, which is the Operations Maintenance Construction and Improvements Tax Program, that was approved and it's in effect, and the tax dollars that are collected within that Deer Creek OMCI to the tune of a little over $125,000. We can start applying for projects that are stormwater related. There's other projects that are eligible too, so I included those in the memo. So if we wanted to do like a stormwater master plan, we could do that. Cleaning of creeks or detention basins, maybe that's later for Brentwood bound. And then like storm sewer inlets, construction of storm water related improvements, that's eligible. So we would be eligible for 50% of those OMCI tax revenue dollars. I'd included in the memo as well, there were 2 projects that MSD already has on their books. So you see the project numbers that they have listed, but it's Powell Avenue and Annalee Avenue. There's some storm sewer improvements. Many years ago it was estimated at $200,000. Obviously it's more than that now. And then Whitehall, Pine Avenue, there's some improvements there. I wasn't sure what the temperature was of the committee, what you'd like us to apply for. There's 4 different dates in 2021, and this is basically like a bank account. If we don't draw on it, it just keeps accruing money. So if you wanted, like I said, to tackle like a large scale stormwater master plan, you could, or if you wanted to tackle some of the low hanging fruit, maybe there's some issues, on residential streets. I know we've had issues with some of those storm tech chambers, basically water in the streets and sidewalks. Do we want to look at any of those? Just trying to see what the committee wants us to start looking at to wrap up a application. And they put the dates in there. It doesn't, they don't start accepting applications until tomorrow. And then there's 4 different dates in 21. There's February 5th, May 7th, August 6th, November 5th.
Yeah, Nancy.
So I have a question to clarify and then a comment. So the 2 projects that you've listed, these are on the MSD list. So these are going to be
Correct.
paid
It's
for
MSD's
separate
master
from
plan.
our OMCI money that's allocated to us.
These are projects that they feel are a priority in Brentwood. But if you don't want to spend money on those and would want to push them in a different direction to spend money on some other project, storm sewers for like Lewis Avenue or Salem, those are streets that don't typically have any sort of inlets whatsoever. It's just curb and gutter. I don't know from your constituents what is the most important.
Okay, so I'm still confused. So are these things that MSD has on a list and they're going to fund? Or are these things that they have on a list and they expect us to use our OMCI money to pay for these 2 projects?
I think there are two different things, and you're hitting the mark, Alderwoman Tice. There are items that are already on their list that are on their list because they have heard from our residents that these are ongoing issues. That's how they made it onto their list. Then the city also has an opportunity to create its own list, and that 50% is what would go toward us implementing that. Dan, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so then I guess my question is, do you have a list of other projects? I know you were gathering some things a few months back. I guess my inclination would be not to apply for something tomorrow because, I know I have some in Ward 1 that I think are really important, but I imagine everyone has really important things in their wards.
Right.
And I would love to see a citywide list of these before we talk about what we would push forward.
Steve, I think you had your hand up next. If you're done, Nancy.
Do we know if we did go for a stormwater master plan, how much is a stormwater master plan?
That's the most expensive thing. So you would need to accrue multiple years because like Ladue, put in perspective, theirs was a couple $100,000. We're only 2 square miles. So I would hope ours would come in less, but I would still expect it to be over 6 figures, over the 100,000 mark.
If we want to do a project, does MSD then come back and go, well, what did your stormwater master plan say? Is that used in conjunction with the projects we want? So it's like something we have to do first before we would take on a larger project?
It's my understanding they don't require the master plan, but it would be nice to develop a master plan so that we could see the prioritization, kind of like what Parks does with their projects. What is the most important thing in Brentwood? I don't know, because there could be things that I haven't even thought of. We do know of areas that have flooded due to it's a 100-year-old town and they just didn't incorporate those improvements along the streets when the streets were built.
And then my last question is, if we decide on a project, who does the research to make sure that what we plan to do is effective? I mean, we've already gone through this route with stormwater or the storm chambers that were inadequate. I mean, does MSD do a study and tell us, no, here's what you need to do? How does that all work on a project?
Say, for instance, like the storm tech, and you wanted to pipe the storm water instead of to the storm tech, it would go to an inlet. We would have to hire an engineering consultant. They would develop plans. The plans would go to MSD, and then they have to meet MSD's design criteria for them to say, yeah, that's a viable project.
Okay.
So
Thank
we know it would work because it would be designed to work, and then they would approve it as long as it met their criteria.
Thanks.
Lisa, you want to add something before I go to Jeff?
Sure, I just wanted to remind the committee that last year when we hired Gonzalez companies for overall stormwater management, that was one of the, like looking for how to design these projects and come up with these projects, that was something that would be covered under that on-call contract with Gonzalez. So we would have a consulting engineer in place.
Thanks, Lisa. Steve, get your answer there.
Yeah, I'm done. Thanks.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nancy's right. I'm sure every ward has problem areas, and I'd love to see that list. I think one that I've, just as an experience with that I think there's some significant concerns of is Ruth. There's several residents that are right there that are, when I talked to them after this last flood, they were saying that they're just going to walk away from their house because it's just they can't afford to have it flood anymore. So there's something going on there. Now my hope is that when Manchester is repaved and everything's redone, that helps mitigate that. But I haven't seen proof yet that that's going to be the case. So I would put that on your list if that isn't already on your list.
You know, the other one that I know, it's not on here, but McKnight, I've had people say that, you know, they feel that the sewers are undersized along McKnight. Whenever it rains, everything goes from north to south. And sometimes it gets bogged down at like Pine Avenue and those areas, and it backs up into people's yards.
Right. I mean, I would put Ruth and Helen as, you know, problem areas within that low spot. That I
can, whatever you think of, we can put together in an Excel table and then develop some sort of ranking order, you know.
Well, isn't that what we did after the catastrophic rain event a couple months ago? I mean, you had to
have a table for that, correct? Yes.
We do have a list.
Yes.
And it's as comprehensive as what you all have brought to our attention and what residents have brought to our attention and what we have personally seen or witnessed. But using our on-call to truly do a stormwater master plan and then execute from that would be ideal. That would be what some of our neighbors have done. Frontenac, City of Frontenac, City of Ladue. I don't remember what other communities we know that they've done that, Dan, but those are the two that I'm more familiar with.
Yeah, Jeff,
Yeah, just one last thing. I know that at one point early on, we talked about Brentwood Bound and how that it's really a flood mitigation for Deer Creek only, but it has nothing to do with Black Creek. I guess my question would be is what are the stormwater plans for Black Creek and helping, all that area. So if that's something that we can understand through this, it would be great.
It could be included in this. We don't have any plans just yet, right, for that.
Right.
I'm done now.
Okay, Nancy?
I have another question sort of prompted by what Steve talked about with the stormwater master plan. How long would we be punting individual projects if we were to decide to do a stormwater master plan?
Until we have the means to pay for all of it. And also, I think what they've done in Ladue and Frontenac is depending on the location of the problem. If it's on a private property and a property owner wants to move it to the front of the list, then there's a cost share ratio that they would pick up. The city would not be responsible for 100% of that cost.
There seems to be some appeal to putting together such a comprehensive plan. It's just, I don't want this to, I don't want us not to do any. I'm wondering how long it would take to fund that. And I don't want to like put off projects for 3 years because we're waiting for money to build up to do this master plan. And then we just keep having these problems. So I guess I'm wanting to know the balance of those two situations.
We also have been, I think at the request of the board, have been setting aside, Eric, is it 50,000
Yes.
every year? I think Alderman Lockmiller may have been responsible for that. So in the budget, so over time that adds up, but it wouldn't add up at such a fast pace as one, would want it to be able to address all those projects.
Yeah, Steve.
Well, I'm just wondering if maybe, I don't know if Gonzalez would offer up what a typical master plan would cost, but say it's, $300,000. Can we do both? Can we do these smaller projects and then set aside on an annual basis monies from this tax to do a master plan 3-4 years down the road? But since we don't really know the answer to what the master plan cost is, I think we're at a loggerhead here.
I'm doing a quick search on my computer. I think we may have given the board that number maybe a year or two ago. So as soon as I find it, I'll send out an email to everybody here. And if you,
I thought it was $250,000, but
I think you might be right, but I want to search for it real quick.
Okay. The only other thing I would add, and we've got in Jeff in my ward on the west side of Lewis Avenue, there's a bunch of backyards that evidently have a problem. And then the high school between Annalee and Madge, we have a lot of front yards. It's almost year round. We've got water coming across practically the whole street on certain locations along there. And then, Jeff mentioned that last flood we had. If you went up on Dorothy Avenue, you could see how the sewer inlets were not positioned correctly, stormwater inlets, to catch most of the flow of the water. A lot of the water was bypassing the inlets completely. So, I would say that mainly on that slope, and some of that might get taken care of when they do the project there for Brentwood Bound, but look at the inlets along Dorothy, would be another one. That's all.
So I'll take a turn. I mean, after the last storm, I had a lot of residents calling, and I sent those over, and that was the same issue I saw, that either the inlets were undersized or there was some malfunction that was preventing the water from getting there. The curb had been washed away, and so it was running off before it got to the inlet and going into people's yards. I mean, on one hand, I feel like we basically have we have an opportunity to make $175,000 this year, the 50 from stormwater and the 125 from OMCI. It would be compelling to me to go solve a bunch of little things with that 175. But also then we're kind of we're being reactive to residents calling, which it's good to be, responsive, but we're just reacting to the people who are yelling the loudest instead of having a comprehensive approach on this. But I think this is where Nancy was going. I would not feel comfortable telling people like, we're on it, in 4 years, we are going to have a report and we are just, we're on it, so I don't know. I'm struggling with this a little bit of what direction do we take? Yeah, Jeff.
I'm going to echo that comment. I think most residents want to see action. And the idea of the bureaucracy of, you just keep talking about it, but nothing ever really happens. So I think I think if there's a way to start accomplishing some of the small problems that we know exist, it's not just most vocal, but we've seen it, we've observed it. You know, if we can accomplish those things, I'd be for that. And then also start to use some of the other money that, you know, we've talked about as planning for a more comprehensive program. I think down the road would be, I think that'd be good.
Dan, how detailed do these project submittals have to be? I mean, I know we would bring Gonzalez in to, you know.
Right, I included an application sample. You know, we have to fill that application cover sheet out, and then we'll have to figure out like a rough estimate. You know, it doesn't have to be super detailed, but before we actually issue, you know, we have to enter into an agreement too for each of these projects. So one of the ones I thought was like Russell Avenue. You know, there's areas that have flooded, and I think there just needs to be improved drainage along Brentwood Park out to the creek. So whatever that cost is, hypothetically say it's $100,000, you know, we have to be able to upfront pay the $100,000 because it's a reimbursement program, just like STPs are. So we would have to pay the $100,000. First it has to qualify, then we have to do an agreement, then we have to agree to the terms of their agreement, and then you could go out for bids and do all that stuff after design, just like a regular project. So I think that's the good approach, is to do smaller projects rather than one giant one. And it takes years, you know, 2-3 years to accrue enough money to do this giant one. But at the end of the day, you're given a report and you still haven't done any projects, you know. So I can take the different lists we have, put them all into one spreadsheet and bring that back, you know, for a future meeting and say, of these, whatever it is, say 10, 15, what's the order we want to proceed in? You know, I can take a stab at it.
Would you be able to ROM estimate each one, you know, because I mean, you just mentioned a $100,000 project. Well, that's more than half of the available funds.
Right. Yeah. We're going to have to come up with some sort of magnitude. You know, if we can, you know, get at least a length and we know what the cost is per foot of pipe, that would give you a really crude estimate. And then, you know, there's other things, of course, we'd have to start looking at later on, you know, utilities and things that we don't even see underground that could cause us to have to relocate it or reroute it before we even start it.
Sure.
And a lot of these are gravity driven. So it's like, you know, you're going to have to be able to go from A to B. It's going to have to flow. You know, you don't want to put pumps in if you can avoid it.
So I found an email that City of Ladue shared with us. They had a 3-phased stormwater management program. They initially hired one consultant for phase 1, which was the needs assessment. Then phase 2 was the master plan. And then phase 3 was the implementation. And she said that it was a 5-year implementation plan. So that goes to, one would need to wait a few years before it would get done.
I mean, I like Dan's idea of just kind of spitballing the list of problems that we know about. I guess once we get that list, though, it's unclear to me how we're going to prioritize that. You know, I mean, we all have people calling us, but I guess we'll just flip a coin or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe
agree
look
with
at
that,
like
but-
how many it affects, you know, how many residents are on that street or block, and, you know, does it affect a school or a church or anything critical? You know, does it affect police, fire? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's ways. I'm just thinking out loud of how in past jobs that we prioritize, you know, water main replacements. It was typically how many people are out of water every time it breaks. You know, does it affect a hospital, a school? You know, they would go to the top of the list, and if it's a cul-de-sac with 10 houses, it's not like you don't care about them. It's just that it's a lower rank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a scorecard would be a good way to go about it.
Yeah.
Is that a motion there, Jeff?
Yeah, sure. If you need that.
Could I clarify what the motion is? Is the motion to spend all the money on spitballs at the problems, or are we going to still set some money aside for a master plan, a stormwater master plan? Going to do our own ranking and just proceed.
It feels like the motion was to get that list and put spitball estimates on it and some prioritization and bring that back to us. Kind of what I heard.
Yeah.
Heard a second there.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, second.
Because I don't think there's tremendous urgency on this in that we have all year, because as Dan points out, there's lots of entry points into the OMCI process, right? So once we have that list and we have a better idea of like, are we looking at, $10 million worth of projects here? Are we looking at, 300,000 that we could knock out over the next couple of years? Maybe that informs our decision of we could, put aside the 50,000 from the stormwater fund and let that build and just continue to take the OMCI to fix the day-to-day problems. But I think once we have that data, then we could have a more informed decision. I mean, the two projects that Dan has brought forward don't resonate with me at all. They don't mean anything to me.
Well, what's interesting to me on these two projects, if I may interject, I think that these were very, well, at least one of them was a persistent homeowner who got this on the radar of MSD. So if I look at this and MSD has this on their list that they're going to have, then they're going to pay for, and I would encourage our residents to go directly to MSD and go that part of the funds as opposed to the part that is getting set aside for us.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve?
I agree. Sometimes MSD responds quicker to taxpayers than they do to us as a city, I would think. But well, I just lost that thought. Let's move on. I'm
All
done.
right. Any other discussion?
Yeah.
All right. So just to clarify, so the motion is to have Dan get that list of issues, put an estimate and a prioritization, understanding the caveat of, it's very imperfect, it's very rough order of magnitude, and bring that back to us for decision. And Dan, do you have an estimate of, is that a 1-2 month thing?
I would think it could, if not the next meeting, then the meeting after, by the March meeting. Because I know we won't have it for that February application date, that's February 5th, but the next one I see is May 7th. That's the second OMCI application. So maybe we can kind of develop the rank by, say, March, and then see if we wanted to have Gonzalez, help us put together an application for the May date. That would be the target.
Just to clarify that motion too, I'd make sure that Dan, I don't know if this would be something that you would handle or not, but putting together that the scorecard, if you will, of how we would, look at each one of those prioritizations.
Yeah, I was going to look at what I did that I have saved at home and kind of see how the rankings would be, like how I can relate stormwater to like other utility replacement.
Right.
One more.
Yes.
Hey, Bola, if Ladue has done one of these, would you be able to maybe find out exactly how they use it and if they use it, or does it sit on a shelf somewhere?
The example I just shared is how they used it. They had and I went to one of their town hall type meetings, and they did it by ward. So they invited their residents to those meetings. And I can share that document with you. I have it here, and in it prioritizes, and you can take a look at it and get a good idea of how they implement that. So I'll share that with you all in a few minutes here.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Man, that's stormwater. It's tough. Okay, let's move on to item B, 9B, change order with TWN. Dan, I think this is you.
Yeah,
Well,
this one's pretty straightforward. I know that Planning Development and Public Works were contacted by Sandstone Group. The road that actually leads up to Total Wine and terminates, just a little bit past Total Wine, closer to PetSmart at that south entrance to the promenade. They're saying that the city still owns that. At one time that was an actual road that went to homes back there before the promenade. And whenever we, like back in 2017, I had road work done, you can kind of see the break point between the color and the concrete on that first photo. but we actually replaced that. It used to be really wavy asphalt, like right in front of Metro lighting, and that was ripped out. NB West put in new concrete, and we stopped it just short of those decorative pillars that leads up into Total Wine. That's where we assumed that the break point was between what the city owns and on the north side of those pillars, what Sansone had. But according to the county map, it's showing that it looks like it's still public road that 300 something feet beyond those pillars. So what I'm trying to do is have TWM using the existing contract that we have with Parks and Public Works, do a change order for $2,600 and actually do the title work and figure out, does this belong to the city or does it not? Because I can't just go in there and fix potholes and pave, not knowing whether I truly own it or not. And then we'll at least document, if it is our ownership, then we have to probably do something to improve it. But I'd like to replat it then and give that to them, and for future maintenance, they would take care of it. It didn't seem right for us to be working in front of Total Wine and PetSmart when I don't really know if that's ours. We stopped it, like I said, at those pillars. So, and we would need a motion to amend that contract and then take it to the full board.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Steve and a second by Nancy. Any questions? I have one after everybody else goes. So Dan, my question is just, I mean, isn't the boundary of like the Hanley Road TDD, which is responsible for like maintaining these roads, isn't that well defined? I guess I'm just confused the more I think about this of why this boundary is unknown.
Well, I think the problem is how the promenade developed. So where Total Wine is, that was Golf Galaxy, and before Golf Galaxy, it was an empty lot. The rest of the promenade developed, your Trader Joe's, your Target, all that stuff, Dobbs, that was, part of the original phasing. Then this stayed empty. I don't know what was there, if there were homes still, but Golf Galaxy came and went, Total Wine's here, and that little stump of a road just seems to be showing up on records, and we just need to figure out where is that terminus. And
Okay.
if it's too far into the development, then maybe we can shorten our responsibility and get this off the records.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right. Motion passes.
Okay.
All right. Good precedence there. Let's keep rolling. All right. Item 9C, a change order with TWN to provide additional property research. Sounds familiar. Dan,
Yep.
I assume you're taking this one too.
Yeah, this is for the street lights. We kind of alluded to that at the beginning of the meeting. So we've got 5 solar powered street lights. We actually have a total of 7, but 5 of them go in York Village. And before I can do that work, I need to draft up some easement documents. And before we do the easement, they actually have to do a property boundary to make sure that if it's number 69 York, what are the limits of 69, who's the owner, and then actually develop a slight little swath along the side of that property so we can put in the light. It might be 5 or 6 feet wide for ingress and egress, and us to be able to put in a foundation and maintain it for perpetuity. So it's $7,100 for those 5 locations in total. And if we only do 3 or 4 of these locations, then obviously it won't be the full amount. We'll just develop easements for the 3 or 4 that actually approve us putting in the lights.
Yeah, Nancy?
So I know that there's some discussion of 2 additional lights in the circle
Oh yeah, York Hills.
in York Hills, think. And
Yeah.
so I guess my question is, are those on the in your budget for this year? And does it make any sense to have TWM do those circles too? Or if only 3 of the people agree to have lights and there's money for 2, we've contracted them for 5, if they need to do that with the land in that circle since it's owned by the neighborhood association?
That's the way I was leaning. I mean, if you approve up to the 7,100, you're going to get 5 easement documents drafted. So if say number 10 York doesn't want it and I can't get it on any of the other corner lots, then that one goes away. But then to your point, you could, I can talk to the trustees and figure out if they're amenable to it, and then we could put in that 4th or 5th light there. Develop an easement around it so that the trustees can execute it.
I don't think the trustees will be a problem.
Yeah, Steve.
And we're having to do this because these locations aren't in a city right away, correct?
Correct, yes.
So going
So I
forward,
can't just drill a hole and put in a foundation because the city has no, ownership of it. I need their approval. And like I said, 2 of them said that they would be agreeable to it.
so just for future reference, if we do this somewhere else and it's not in our right of way, you need to factor in about $1,500 a pole, since beyond the cost of the pole to do something like this going forward.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the use of TWM for the easement surveying services for the York Village Lights.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from Nancy and a second from Steve. Any discussion, additional discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, so moving on to item 10, new business. We're almost there. Okay, we've got surveying services throughout the city of Brentwood, additional property findings. All right, more survey. We are like keeping these guys employed.
We're doing, they're doing good work for us. So I'll try to make this quick. Obviously, we're going along. I do, share my screen real quick. Just to give you guys different views. So we had TWM work on 3 additional properties after our surveys last year. First one was that in Parent Alley from Mount Calvary Church to McGrath. And I do have the plats too, if you want to see those on screen, but this is probably a little bit easier view. This is what we gave to you guys last year when we talked about this project. And so what TWM found is that there is an apparent 15-foot alley all the way down this orange section, including basically an alley in where the school is, which they basically have overtaken since they own the property on both sides. And so there are some encroachments, but our recommendation is to vacate this alley to the owners. The only exception might be this one, which is the alley from Park Ridge to Mount Calvary, especially if there's ever going to be discussion as a different entrance into this property in the future, whether it's for a park or whether it's for, if they happen to sell off pieces of the property to get back there. So that would be the recommendation from staff on this one.
Brandon, do you want comments or questions per one, or do you want?
Yeah, no, let's take them one at a time. So A, D, and F, or whatever it is. Yeah, Nancy.
So I completely concur with the staff recommendation. I think keeping that little stretch between Park Ridge and the church is in the city's interest. Dave Plufkin said something at our ward meeting the other day that said that one of our jobs is to think 30 or 40 years down the road. And I don't know what that property is going to look like in 30 or 40 years, but I don't think we should abandon that little small stretch that Eric recommended keeping between Park Ridge and Mount Calvary. But I don't see a need to keep the part between Park Ridge and St. Clair. And then my next question, along with, that's my feeling. My next question is, if it is abandoned, how does that work? Do you split it between the homeowners? How does that even work for the city to do?
Yeah, I'd have to look at Paul and Lisa, but I believe it is a ordinance to the property owners basically saying that they get, if it's 15 feet, I think it's probably split right down the middle, so 7.5 feet on each property.
Right. We would approach them and see what they would be agreeable to and then go forward with that.
The only other thing that I would add to that is that to carry out the paperwork the entire way. So sometimes communities go ahead and they pass the ordinance to vacate, but then they don't follow through in terms of coming up with the survey plats, vacating the easement, writing the legal descriptions, and kind of filing that with the recorder. And then that's how these things kind of get lost again. So there's expenses to that, but I would assume if the residents are interested in just adding to their property, that they would hopefully assume those costs, but have to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve.
That was going to be my question. So this we're not looking at additional costs going for, if we decide to go with the recommendations, is there another step? So it'd be another change order if we're having to do all the recording of these? Are there surveys involved? Are there?
To kind of piggyback on what Lisa said, we wouldn't need to do the surveys. The surveys have already been done, but to kind of rewrite the legal description, to do the title work, and then to redo the plats, put the, give the plats to St. Louis County, and then to legally record it. If we took on that cost, yeah, there would be additional costs, or if, as Lisa suggested, we talk to the homeowners to share that cost, there would be a possibility of for the homeowners to take care of that cost.
Okay.
I would think in this case that doesn't seem unreasonable to ask the homeowners to help with that. So.
I don't either. And, the cost of us now that we know we own it, we need to maintain it yearly. So getting rid of that cost is a plus. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification for me, since I've never dealt with something like this before, but do we have to then have all of the homeowners agree to share the costs, or would it be on a case-by-case basis? This neighbor is agreeable, but this neighbor isn't. That seems very complicated to me.
It would be on a case-by-case basis. I have a good example of an individual that we're all familiar with who had indicated that if the city were to abandon the trail that this individual has already developed, he would be willing to take on the cost to do that and work out an arrangement or an agreement with the neighbor. So we wouldn't know until we approach, those impacted property owners.
Yeah, I heard from said individual.
Well, that's item G, but I will say I talked to Mount Cab, their strategic committee, and they talked to Pastor Will. They don't have any plans right now, but their feel was if there was a way that we could maintain that little stretch on their side, who knows what the future holds for that large piece of property behind there. They thought that would be a good thing. And Dan, this kind of came up when we were talking about roads that needed to be repaved. If we did retain that one side of it, do we need to go repave that, or can we leave it the way it is? I mean, it meets code right now. It's maintained because it's somebody's driveway. Do we really need to do anything, or can we just retain that side of it and just keep it the way it is, the status quo?
Yeah, that was in the budget, if you recall, to have it milled and overlaid. But, whenever we get bids again, we can certainly take it up then. Do you want to include it with the bid, or do you want to table it another year? If that develops, it's still in decent enough shape. And then the only other thing I would add is that we would also need to get with Ameren, because they do have overhead power lines. So if we vacate that, then their rights need to go with the adjacent property owners so that they can maintain their facilities. Since years ago, I mean, this is, long time ago, probably 90 years or whenever those were developed, that, there were rights to all utilities, not just Ameren. It just said, any utilities, for the city of Brentwood. So if there's a sewer there, I don't believe there is, but I definitely know there's power lines.
Hopefully the survey shows if there is a sewer there.
Right. They would have picked up a manhole lid or something when they developed the plat.
Yeah. And my final thought is, we've done the survey, we've done our part. I would be in favor of the residents picking up pretty much all costs after this. This seems like a windfall.
They're getting more land. Yeah.
This is like a huge red flag for them. So, and I can't imagine people wouldn't be just willing to do that.
Especially if they're already encroaching on it.
Right.
Right. Okay, does anybody have a motion here? And I think you got to clearly articulate what the action is.
I will make a motion, Alderman Weggie, to abandon the portion of the 15-foot wide alley between the east side of Park Ridge through the McGrath School portion of the alley that is shown on that plot. And I, along with that motion, think the city should keep the portion of the alley on the west side of Park Ridge between Park Ridge and Mount Calvary Church.
Second.
And something about residents in there too?
Oh, and that the city will work with the residents on abandoning the land, and that the expectation is that the residents would be willing to absorb the cost of the work that needs to be done going forward, the legal work that needs to be done.
Great. Does that second still hold, Steve?
You got it. Yep.
All right. Any further discussion? Well articulated, Alderman Tice. Okay. I assume we can just do this yays, right? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. All right. One down. Item 2.
We'll move on to area F, which is this area basically in Melvin Avenue. And it's easier to kind of look at St. Louis County Property Viewer, because when the property was originally platted, basically every home from 2504 to 2520 basically came along this line here. There's these 2 walkways that were originally platted to this area, which was platted as a community park, but then never dedicated to the city of Brentwood. It's owned by someone named Betty Young. TWM can't find a whole lot of ownership information beyond that. And then the city actually owns this little piece here, and we don't know why. We don't know if because the city lost this walkway, that then they took over this little piece here. We're trying to figure that part out as well. So this is still a enigma to a lot of people. And what TWM recommends is to run a title search all the way back to inception of the subdivision. That way we can kind of figure out exactly who owns it, where they own it, things like that, because it is still somewhat of a question. Also, this little area right here, the real question is, do we need it, or would it make more sense to have that even boundary line all the way through? And so we actually recommend, see if the city wants to transfer that back to 2504 Melvin. So that's what's going on with this piece of property. I'd also say, as we're talking about it, this just came up, is if you look at what is now blue, which is owned by the company basically over here, I forgot the exact name of it, you see how it actually comes into the park, and that's our pathway. That's green space in the park. There's the creek. And so we're actually encroaching on their property. And so we actually would recommend maybe having some conversations with this property owner about maybe making the creek line the proper boundary line for this property as well. So that just kind of cropped up as well too. So those are the different things about this piece or this parcel.
Okay, but we're not talking about the rhombus over there on the right-hand side yet, right? We're just talking 2524 and 2504.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, Steve.
And then there's also a little walkway behind Florence, correct, Eric?
Behind Florence.
Because you mentioned 8125 and 8135, Florence has encroachments on a walkway.
Yeah, it is. In here, give me a second. Sorry. It's easier to see everyone. It's the encroachment on this little 6-foot walkway here.
Okay.
So that I would imagine that was platted to give people the access to this area back here. But again, it's going back to the original plat and whenever it was platted. So that's what they're encroaching on, is this area right here.
So right now we can't really look at talking to homeowners till we find out more about parcel 2524.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So what are you recommending?
I recommend finding out more to work with TWM to do that title search back to inception to figure out who actually owns this. If it turns out that it was supposed to be deeded to the city, we can get that properly worked out. Or if it is actually owned by someone else like Betty Young, we find out who Betty Young is, last current address, those type of things, so that we can then figure out the next step there.
Then I'll make a motion that we do forward on. Do we have to forward this onto the board? Or is this your direction to you?
It would just be another title. It would be continued title search, right?
Yeah, I don't know if this one would have to go to the board, but although it is spending money, so it probably does need to go to the board.
We already have a contract with, who did the survey?
PWM.
So I think this would fall in that.
Okay. So motion to do further research on the parcel. What was that parcel?
2524.
2524. And then shall I add to contact the property to the west of the to the east of the playground? Direct you to contact them? Do you want that in this motion?
I think, seems like I can bring that back at another time.
Okay. All right, then just the motion to do the further research on that parcel.
Second.
Yeah, all right. All right, we got a motion and a second from Steve and Nancy. Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, just so I might have missed it. And why do we need to find out who owns this? Are we being asked to maintain it? Are we, do we have plans for the park there for taking advantage of the topography and putting some amazing slide there? Or what's the reason that we need to really figure this one out?
This cropped up probably 3 or 4 years ago when Alderman Slusser was still an Ward 3 alderman. Residents of Melvin had talked to him because basically that area is the hill that goes down to the park. There's concerns about maintaining it because it's overrun with honeysuckle. They talked about way back when there's actually a pathway that went back there down to the park. And so really at that time, we said we don't own it, so we really can't do anything with it. If the city does own it, we start looking at how to properly maintain that and making sure we could utilize it as part of the park.
Okay, that helps clear it up for me. Thank you.
And Eric, just to clarify, this is just 2524. We are not making any decisions about 2502, that little weird piece yet, right? We would wait to see.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Bola, can we do a yay? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Great. Okay. Item G.
Okay. So the last one is, Area G, which is basically Bremerton to Manderley. Again, it's the orange in here. And what they found is that there is still a 5-foot dedicated walkway in this location. If you go out there, you won't see that walkway at all. It's been taken up by most of the property owners along that walkway. So our recommendation is vacating the dedicated walkway from Bremerton to Manderley. And then in addition, what we talked about last time is the walkway between Manderley that's a 5-foot dedicated walkway as well. Let's see if I can pull in a little bit more. There's a 5-foot dedicated walkway here, and then the city owns this. So to vacate from here all the way back to Bremerton, and then also work on vacating the strip of land here that the city actually owns. So dedicated walkway, city owns this part. We still think we should vacate all of it. And very much like we did on property area A.
Yeah, I tried to find it. I went to all 3 roads and I couldn't, I knew where it was, but I couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to vacate the walkway between Manderley to Bremerton. Cost to be bore by the property owners. In addition, the strip the city owns on Hilldale.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from Steve and a second from Nancy. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, good stuff. All right, new business item 10B, High School Drive STP pedestrian improvements.
That one is mine.
Yep.
If you recall, we've submitted numerous STP applications over the last 4 or 5 years. This is another opportunity East-West Gateway has open until February 11th. So we met internally and looked at several different projects and narrowed it down to high school. For those of you that have been around a while, you might recall we did submit high school back in 2017, and that was for running a sidewalk on the east side from Manchester to Litzinger, and that was 2,000 linear feet. Now we're looking at running it even further north and connecting up around White Avenue, so it would connect the schools and it would connect down to Litzinger, where you already have the STP that runs from Annalee to McKnight and go all the way down to Carl's. We think it'll score a lot better because Manchester Road's, undergoing its own transformation, and eventually it'll have a crosswalk to the east there, closer to Manderley. So we think it'll score well. I know we just received, recommendation for funding on the other STP application that we submitted. So this is another opportunity to see if we can get some free money. It's a reimbursement program, so we have to be able to afford it up front. We're looking at $1,995 to have TWN submit the application. And then we would, of course, have to submit a check for 1/2 of 1%. And if we don't get it, the check's returned and we're out basically $2,000. If we do get it, well, now we're going to have another new sidewalk. This one I didn't include lights just because I think it'll score better. And there's already some existing lights there on that east side. We could probably fill them in with the decorative ones or even solar if it works in the future. Just because I think we would score better, because looking at the numbers in 2017, just that 2,000 feet was $668,000. This is going to be more than that because it's probably closer to 2,800 feet. And that 668 included lights. I think I can bring that number down, closer to 700 if we take the lights out, but extend the sidewalk further north. So looking for a motion to enter into, or actually to submit the TIP application and to contract with TWM to do that on our behalf. We'll work with them. We've already got a lot of the data from the original submittal 3 years ago or 4 years ago now.
Yeah, Steve?
Dan, why the east side, since the schools are on the west?
The east side seems easier utility-wise. I mean, there's some overhead power poles, but there's less trees on the east side than the west side. I don't want to impinge upon our city-owned trees on that west side. The east side seemed a little bit easier. And once you get down to Carl's, it puts you closer to the crosswalk to cross Manchester that's slightly to the east of that. Either way, you're going to have to cross somewhere along the line. If you're going to school, you're right. You get up to White Avenue, but there's already crosswalks at White Avenue. Maybe in the future, if we do get this, you'd want to extend it even further north, go all the way to Brentwood Forest.
Thanks.
Motion.
I move that we approve spending $1,995 to have TWN submit a transportation improvement program on our behalf.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from Nancy and a second from Jeff. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great, good stuff. We love free money. Okay, we're moving on to exciting stuff, pervious driveways. Lisa, I think you might have this one, or I might have this one.
Well, I guess I could start and you could chime in. That'll
Okay.
work for you.
Yeah,
So,
that'd be great.
highlighting the virtues of permeable paving, I think has really started to work our way into the planning documents. It's mentioned, encouraged in the 2018 comprehensive plan, and also the various sub-area plans that we have for redevelopment. And if you recall, also last fall when we worked on stormwater control and developed the best management practice manual, there was a whole section of using permeable pavement is a really good method in trying to control stormwater. So I think the question came up, how right now do our codes allow it or does it not allow it? And so just to answer that, the good news is that our codes does allow it. And in fact, the permeable pavement option is actually being used now with the parking lot improvements that are planned for the Retina Center along 2201 South Brentwood. So, and also we're right now reviewing another project where they're very interested in trying to get a LEED certified building. So they're proposing the use of permeable pavement also. So even in our single family districts, if you go to the zoning code, there's really only one line, so it won't take me long to read it. But what it says about driveways and off-street parking in the A and B single-family zoning districts is just that all driveways must be paved with a durable, dust-free, load-bearing surface. And that's it. And so we would be able to allow things other than just concrete or asphalt. And the only thing in the past that I think that we've had to have people remove is when you have maybe a neighborhood that has homes from the 1920s, 1930s, and they're called like ribbon driveways, but there would be those driveways that just have the two concrete strips, basically where the car wheels stay on the concrete strips and then it's grass all in between. And the only reason when there's been transfer in ownership or occupancy that those had to be removed is because they've just been in really bad shape and they're not load bearing. So in that case, they pulled them out. Now they've replaced them though with asphalt because really that still is probably, you know, the most cheapest means or just what they wanted to go ahead and replace the driveway with. And then even in our multifamily and our commercial and industrial districts, it kind of reads the same way. All it says about paving surface is just all open off-street parking areas shall be improved with a compacted base surface with an approved all-weather dustless load-bearing material suitably designed for the intended use. So again, the acceptable or more common permeable pavement options that people generally look to would be like pervious or permeable concrete, porous asphalt, modular pavers, flagstones, cobblestones, all those things would be allowed. So I guess in questions, does anything need to change about our code? I do think it's kind of subjective that we don't really have a parameter to determine if something is load bearing. So I think the one ordinance, Alderman Weggie, that you provided with Minneapolis had actually that parameter of using like 4,000 pounds. So that might be something we would want to go ahead and add to, I think, the code. And otherwise, I thought there was one other thing that would probably, oh, and the only other thing maybe then what we'd want to do is look at that section that's in the BMP manual. And if there's certain like information in there that is useful that we could put in the zoning requirements in terms of how to install it to be more effective, maybe there's something that we could still add there as well. But at the very least, what we could do is just add in the zoning code and reference it back to the BMP manual as well, and then they could read it there. So I don't know exactly, and that's where I want you to chime in because I'm not sure where we all want to go with this, but that's just what our kind of research on existing codes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, thanks Lisa for doing that kind of quick turn. I mean, this started with, I had talked to some developers and they were under the impression that they were not able to install permeable. And I thought I'd gone through the ordinances and found somewhere that it said that wasn't, it had to be asphalt or concrete. And so maybe it's just a clarification because I think this would be a really easy way to allow people to mitigate stormwater issues. And again, there seems to be a disconnect maybe of people that think they can do it. And if the way the codes are right now allow it, then I'm good, I think. And I mean, it would be good to clarify it, but I think the most important thing is allow people to do it.
Yeah, and again, we have examples just recently that people have been, you know, it's in site plans and things that you've been looking at. So, I think for the most part it's working. I don't know I know that one ordinance again had other options of like crushed limestone, and that would really kind of conflict with not having something that's asbestos. And I'm not really sure if the Brentwood community is ready to go there. And then there's other turf systems too that I think are kind of questionable in terms of, you know, what their appearance is and how you really maintain the grass. A lot of times the grass does not make it, but you know, the weeds grow in between. So, but again, those systems, you know, people want to suggest those. I guess, again, the question comes up, would we allow it because it's load bearing or not? So I just don't know if there's any types of surfaces maybe you wouldn't be comfortable with too, because now might be the time to go ahead and prohibit something like that if you wanted to include that in the code. And mainly it would be, again, gravel systems or just the turf systems. Do you want me to just kind of look into it a little bit further and try to make this clear and bring it back at the next month, and we can just kind of go over these things and kind of get your input? Or
well, I mean, I'm not speaking for the committee, but I mean, if this is allowed, I think that is the primary hurdle that we wanted to put in place. If there needs to be clarification in you know, the codes and things like that, then I would say that's something we could consider. But you know, I think allowing it is the number one thing that I was really interested in.
okay, all right, good, yeah.
Yeah, Steve.
So this would be residential, commercial, across all our zoning types.
Yes.
Okay. And then on commercial areas, is there like a best practices for maintaining this so it remains permittable?
I don't really know too much about that, like for, you know, how long it lasts or anything, how durable it is, or again, just even with the general maintenance of it. So,
But we wouldn't require that. At this time, we wouldn't require the maintenance of these surfaces.
I guess I'm not sure what's being asked.
Well, I mean, if it's permitted, I mean, I don't even know what these surfaces, I can visually, I've seen some of these surfaces, and I know the pores can become clogged and they basically rendered useless as far as water control, unless they're kept cleaned and that type of thing. I just didn't know if we had in our code that they must maintain this in some fashion.
Well, they definitely are if they use them for a BMP, because with that new stormwater ordinance, when it was adopted, they have to even have a maintenance agreement that's actually recorded. So whatever they effectively put in there for stormwater control has to be maintained. So if it's permeable pavers or any other kind of mechanism, those will have to be maintained so that they effectively work from here on out.
Okay, that answers. Thanks.
Okay, I'm not sure, Lisa, if you need a motion on anything, then I think this is probably just informational only then.
Okay.
And I appreciate you providing that. But I will go back to those developers and tell them they can. Good
They
to know.
can come and talk to us.
Yeah, that's what I'll tell them. Okay. All right, let's move on to item 10D. This is 8910 Madge Avenue, temporary ADA signage.
Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. 8910 in its existing state has a shared driveway apron with the house that's next to it, which is at 8906. 8906 is actually a tear down and new construction. So the request is that we put some sort of ADA signage in front of 8910 so that the person has closer access to the house. If you look at the photos, one of the problems is that it had a gravel driveway. It's overgrown. That's why there's that double apron there. I know Lisa can speak to the code issues, but I know that they're supposed to have off-street parking and they don't. I don't know if there's other code issues besides that, but you know, per the municipal code, we need either a resolution or ordinance before I can put up a sign of any sort. And we've prepared that resolution for the board meeting if you decide that you want to grant this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve.
I know Jeff took the brunt of this, but this is temporary. This is while the construction's going on at the house to the west. This gentleman's, and he tells me he's got the documentation to prove it. With these subcontractors coming in, they're parking in front of his house. He's got an illness right now that gave him the disabled sticker, and he just wants to be able to park as close to his front door as possible without having construction in front of it. So he's just asking during this period that we just grant the temporary, and then once the construction is done, the temporary could be lifted. That's where we're at.
Is that something that can happen? I mean, is there a mechanism for a temporary spot like that?
Lisa?
Yeah, so I would say you could go ahead and pass a resolution, and in the resolution, maybe you could have the terms that just would make it temporary. So my thought would be that to include that either upon completion of final inspection of the house at 8906 Madge, or the property owner restoring the single stall off-street parking space, that you know, then the temporary space would go away, or something to that effect. So
I would agree with that addition to the ordinance.
we have been in contact, I mean, with all the parties. We've talked to the contractor. We talked, you know, we told them, you know, please just, you know, be kind, and, you know, try to really kind of stay out of that spot, and kind of share with them other places that we thought the contractors would be better off maybe parking. And you know, we talked to the gentleman, and so he has the documentation. He has an accessible placard sticker and everything. And you know, then we also made contact with the property owner. So I mean, he needs to go ahead and comply with too. They do have to restore that parking space. And so we put him in contact with the contractor of the new home construction. So apparently they are kind of working together to try to coordinate that, because it would only make sense that they try to do it at the same time. So we'll just, you know, kind of stay on it and help facilitate this arrangement. But in the meantime, yeah, I don't see a problem with going ahead and just passing this resolution, so on a temporary basis.
Yeah, Steve?
And I just add that, you know, this is that shared apron that's, even though if he goes to restore this, at least I believe that this shared apron is going to have to be widened. I don't know what the plans are going forward with the house to the west that's being built. But this, even if he had part of that driveway there, I think there was an encroachment issue. And the fact that you've got this shared apron, which there are a lot of houses in Ward 3 where they share driveways. And I just think you can see the picture, that's his car. It's a boat. And you know, he would just have a hard time getting it in there. So I would just go for the temporary, and then they're going to have to work out the driveway situation once that house is done.
Yeah, and so what will happen is there'll be 2 separate curb cuts.
Right.
Yeah, Jeff?
So do we need a motion then to take this to the board? Yeah, okay. I move that we take this ordinance for a temporary ADA sign placed for this resident to be removed once the home, the new home is constructed, or the driveway is replaced at this property, off-street parking property is done.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Jeff and a second by Steve. Any other further discussion?
Just one question for Dan. Are you going to have to get dig right out there before you can put signs in?
We do. We can't just put the post in there. I can have someone call locates in as early as tomorrow, because it takes about 48 hours for them to respond. So that way, assuming the board passes it, we're not waiting another 2 days next week, especially with it being a short week. I don't know that they being one call, I don't know if they work Monday. I don't know.
And what do you need from him to verify that, yes, he has a disabled sticker?
We have all that.
They
We
did.
stopped and talked to him. We got
Okay.
pictures and the information, so we're good.
Thank you.
And this would go for a first and second reading on Monday and Tuesday
I actually have
night.
it as a resolution, so it's on the consent agenda. So
And you have a sign hanging on the wall down there, ready to go?
we do. Yeah, we have signs, we have posts. Like I said, I'll just be proactive and have one of our guys do the one call.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Great. Okay. 10E, e-cargo bikes. This is the motorcycles I mentioned.
This is me. And so basically the department's looking to be a pilot location for an e-cargo bike. Something that Alderwoman Tice actually brought forward to me. And I think it's a wonderful idea. Basically, SARS Infrastructure, who's the company, is launched the first public sector of e-cargo bikes in North America. They worked with Holland Company to develop a bike and did a pilot in Madison and Portland. And now what they're trying to do is they're having their first generation of their bikes come out, and they're looking for pilot locations. So again, I can go through all the sustainable benefits of e-cargo bikes. But I think there's a lot of usage of what we could do in the Parks and Rec department. The benefit of maybe us is that we could then share, pilot study with a number of cities around us, like Richmond Heights, Maplewood, Clayton, so they get more than just one city, which makes us an attractive location for this pilot. And after that, I talked about how much the cost is. They're thinking the first line of bikes are going to be about $12,000 to $13,500. And if everyone's agreeable to it after the pilot, we'd look at putting that in our budget in future years. So that is our recommendation to move forward to the Board of Aldermen.
But just to clarify, Eric, you are not asking for $12,000 to $15,000 right now. This is just approval to get a basically free to use and try out bike.
Exactly. And they just asked for data from us and a little bit of marketing that we're doing this pilot program with them.
And this was unanimously supported by the Sustainability Commission.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that we bring this forward, that we apply for this trial for the e-cargo bikes and bring it forward to the Board of Aldermen.
Second that.
Okay, we got a motion from Nancy and a second by Jeff. Any other?
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
So I just want to thank Eric for, I just saw a newsletter and sent it, and you all read it and looked into it, and here we are, hopefully getting a trial for these cargo bikes. So kudos to you all for just taking something I read and running with it. So thank you.
Thank you for forwarding it to us, because I hadn't seen it yet, and it's a wonderful thing that we are excited to be a part of, hopefully.
Yeah, Steve?
I just got a quick question on it. What are the pedals for? Is that just to get it once to go?
I mean, it is, for those who are in better shape or can handle the load a little bit more, you don't need the motor. You can pedal it on your own. The electric parks is to give you that extra oomph if you have that 660-pound payload.
How fast will
They put a regulator on it. They say that the motor will stop at 20 miles an hour. They said if you hit that and then you go down a hill, a decent hill in Madison, our rep said she got up to about 28, 29. But yeah, the regulator.
I think it'll be great. If we get that Public Works Parks building built, you'll be able to pedal that thing right out of the.
And especially when you talk about, the connection with Brentwood Bound, and then even street light, we can get all the way across to Brentwood Park. I really think Karen, our horticulturalist, will love this. And then we'll have others who will reluctantly agree to use it. But I think they'll love it once they start using it.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Great. All right, let's move on to item 11A, citizen comments.
There are none.
Fantastic. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thanks. We got a lot done. I know it was a long meeting, so thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Meeting.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Aye.